Hey y'all, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is Bonus Tipplers,
The podcast where we read all the books we used to steal off our grandmother's nightstands.
and then we drink about it. This episode is sponsored by Kensington's newest, Lone Wolf. This anthology features stories from 3 best-selling authors, Diana Palmer, Rebecca Zanetti, and Kate Pierce. Each are beloved for writing sexy romances with alpha heroes and strong, adventurous heroines. The novellas in Lone Wolf all feature a loner hero, his wolf sidekick, and a heroine in danger who turns to him for help. In this book, we have 3 novellas. We have Colorado Cowboy by Diana Palmer, The Wolf on Her Doorstep by Kate Pierce, and Rescue Cowboy Style by Rebecca Zanetti. All of these sound super fun. We have grumpy tenants, we have people running from killers, and we have a rescue. So all awesome things, and this sounds like a super fun beach read or cowboy read. So go pick up your copy of Lone Wolf, which features Diana Palmer, Rebecca Zanetti, and Kate Pierce from wherever you buy your books.
On this episode, we read Peyton Place by Grace Metalious. Now, some trigger warnings that come with the book. You're expecting a scandalous book, and it's got scandalous stuff in it. But unintentionally in the book, there's also a great deal of like 50s racism. They drop the N-word like your grandma at Thanksgiving. And there's also some bad depictions of mental illness, including a death by suicide. So all those are things that like are not kind of planned to shock you, that may shock you in this book. What you bought your ticket for, though, in this book, you got to get what you get. We got incestuous rape. We got a secret illegal abortion with a bonus-free appendectomy. We got an industrial carnival accident. We have a cat that's strangled in truly bizarre circumstances. There's a suicide by hanging. There's guys who barricade themselves in a cellar for 6 weeks to drink and shit in the corners until they get the DTs and have to be hospitalized. There's stolen valor. There's a hard ravishing and a hard slap, and it's by a character that you're supposed to like, so that's like not cool. There's stigma about extended breastfeeding. There's murder, most foul. There's also a dude who is so drunk that the local Pentecostal church thinks he's speaking in tongues, and they make him a deacon. That is the kind of book this fucking book is, y'all. Get ready, buckle up, because we are doing Peyton Place. And we have a special guest.
Yes, we are joined by a very special guest today. We have Henry, who is one half of the FireStarters podcast. You have heard him before. He is most famous for his amazing dramatic reading of Adam and Eva, where during one of the heights of the moments, he's like, what voice am I going to give this guy? It was amazing.
It was truly great. It was a banner moment for civilization.
I did forget. I forgot I did that until just now.
Well, also, Courtney didn't bother to tell him that these people are supposed to be African American.
Well, oh, seriously?
Yes.
Oh, crap. I didn't know that.
Like, none of your voices were, I thought they were, it was very appropriate. So I wanted you to go in and have your own artistic sensibility.
Oh, very good.
So Henry is on because, again, he's part of FireStarters podcast. And that is the podcast that kind of breaks down the references in Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire in chronological order. It's a really great podcast. It's kind of this awesome mix of kind of pop culture and history, and it's really informative and fun. And one of their episodes was on Peyton Place. So, he's kind of our non-expert, we'll call it. So, welcome, Henry.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for reading this absolutely insane book.
We were too lazy to read the book for our podcast, so we just watched the movie. And the book, I'm glad you made me read the book, because the book is crazy.
I'm so sorry that you might have missed it. I would have hated to have not experienced this one.
Yes.
The movie's so boring in comparison.
Yeah, after we talk about the book, we're going to talk about the differences between the two, because they are fairly, significantly different. Yeah. So Peyton Place was written by Grace Metalious. We're saying it that way, right?
Yeah.
Again, we're saying Metalious. whether it's
because
right or
all
not.
I want to do is say metalloy for no reason. This book was written it was Grace Metalious in 1956. It kind of describes these three women, how they're kind of forced to come with their own, come to terms with their own identity. This book, like, it had to have blown the wigs off of all the old people. Like, it was
Yes.
on the best time. It was basically obviously this is what I'm talking about is like a YA version, but this was kind of like a Twilight or a 50 Shades of Grey, but for the 1950s. It was on the bestseller for 59 weeks. Within the first week, 60,000 copies were sold. And I think I saw like a stat, that was basically like 1 out of every 10 households had a copy of this book.
And I bet most of them passed it around,
Yes.
And the copy I got, it's a library copy. And, the copyright here says 54, but it doesn't say anything else. So this may be an original copy. But I tried to do the thing where you stand it on end and let it go and to see if all the dirty bits come out in the middle. But it just falls, the whole thing falls to the left or right. So I am not sure if it would have actually given me the sexy parts if I'd done that.
Oh.
But it's just, the binding is a little bit trashed. So sorry. I was hoping. I did an experiment.
It's a really crazy book because another controversial book from the 50s is The Catcher in the Rye. And this is so much crazier in comparison. It's only a 5-year it's 5-year difference between the two. You know what I mean? This book was out in 1956. Catcher in the Rye out 1951. 100 times crazier, despite being both controversial books in the 50s.
I think it's that women had a lot to get off their chests.
Yeah. It is kind
Before
of
you had it bad as a male teenager.
Right, yeah, I know. Like these are your darkest desires? Well, guess what?
I do wonder if that has something to do with because Catchers in the Rye still has kind of that, their legacy that these books have. They have two very different kind of, arcs that they go on. And that Peyton Place, becomes kind of synonymous with soap operas and steaminess and ridiculousness. And then Catcher in the Rye, especially for, Gen X kids, all Gen X dudes went through the Catcher in the Rye Fight Club phase, and
Yeah.
where no one
And if some dude look, young ladies, if you're going out on a date and you ask this dude what his favorite book is and he says The Catcher in the Rye, get up and go now. A, he hasn't read a book since high school. And B, that's the one? No. That and Atlas Shrugged. Those are the two that you just need to leave for. Thank me later.
Oh, God. Yeah, you say infinite jest like every other liar.
Oh, yeah. See, infinite jest is for the person who read a book after college, but who really wants to stay Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah. So within 10 days of this book being published, it sold 60,000 copies, which is bananas, especially for 1956. So it became this franchise that spawned, essentially 4 decades. So the movie was adapted by Fox in 1957. And then Metalious wrote a follow-up book in 1959 called Return to Peyton Place. And that was filmed in 1961. And then they made a TV show it was like a daytime soap opera. I think there were a couple of soap operas. There was Return to Peyton Place that was from 1972 to 1974. And then there was a TV show from 1964 to 1969 that Mia Farrow got her start on. So it really kind of became this whole, it was, if you think about it, it's one of the first big, I guess, American franchises. So...
Well, the weird thing is, though, that all this happened from a book that a lot of people were too embarrassed to admit they read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was I thought it was going to be way boringly tame. This book is dirty.
Yeah. But I'm not sure if the movie and the TV series changed what people thought of it, because those two were way watered down in comparison. The TV series, nothing happens in the TV series apparently. They change anything controversial in it.
It's interesting that this franchise was built on basically this idea, or this, the franchise was built on this book that really just kind of takes the doors off of, and it's one of the things that we talk about with, a lot of like traditional romance novels is, they go behind the door. It's not just like the door is closed and you are to assume what happens. They go behind the curtain and you see everything. And she does the same thing. Like, she just blows the doors off and you get to see all of the weird, terrible things that prim and proper, small town people are doing. And I think everything that like came from that gets diluted and watered down, just like, what happened in a real small town. So,
right. So, yeah, Henry, why don't you tell us a bit about Grace, last name we can't pronounce, and kind of if you want to like anchor us before we like get into the horrible things that happen in this book.
So Grace Metalious lived a rock star life. she you know how like Elvis kind of burnt out in his fame and just like did all the drugs, did everything he can with his money and power. Grace Metalious was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that as well. So I think she grew up from quite humble background. She married her husband, George Metalious, at like quite a young age. I think she just like married him the moment she became like an adult because she met him as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And I don't think his family quite like her because he was like a bit more higher class. Like they're all like educated and posh and whatnot. And sorry. And eventually, like, their marriage just went to shit, where he has affairs and she has affairs and they just don't really care and they have kids. But she always had a dream of like, oh, I want to be a writer. So she's a bit like Allison in the novel. Is that Allison?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She definitely feels like a self-insert character. Like, I wouldn't say a Mary Sue because terrible things happen to Allison.
Oh, yeah.
But she feels like she's the voice of the writer.
She's a little bit like Selena, though, too, because of the, the husband thing or the, the family.
Yeah.
Because Ted's family never liked Selena, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So, yeah, I guess she
I got you off track.
Across several people, yeah.
Yeah.
But apparently, like, once they got married, like, she just spent, even after having kids, she's like, I want to be a huge novelist. That's, like, her dream. So there are, like, stories of how she kind of, like, oh, I'm busy writing, so she just lock her kids out of the house so they don't bother her. And then, like, her kids will have to, like, go to their neighbor's house to, like...
It was the 50s. That's just what people did in the 50s. I mean, my parents used to throw me out when my mom was just mopping the floor.
That's what my mom did as well. Mm-hmm. But I just stayed in place that's carpeted so she can't mop it.
Right, yes.
Yeah, apparently, like... Because she was, like, unconventional, the local people gossiped about her a lot. And she just like, oh, I hate those people so much. I'm going to still write stories about you. And she wrote a few novels before, I think. And she basically went through a book of, like, what do you call it, agents. And she looked through names and was like, oh, which one sounds the most French? And they found this She found this literary agent called Jacques Chambrun or something, and this guy was just like, as you imagine, like really, really flamboyant and well dressed, and like to go around in limos. He didn't have much luck getting her initial books get interest, but then he went for an interview in like a rival publisher. Do you know much about that lady?
I read a Vanity Fair article.
Yeah, that article's really good.
Yeah.
The article basically took most of this from that, also the biography from the 60s, I think. Yeah, he was going for an interview in this where Kitty Messner was a huge publisher at the time, and she took an interest. And basically, she was the only one that was like, oh, this is actually going to be successful. She was a lady herself. She's like, this actually talks about important things. We just got to change a few things like about the incest, and we're good.
But that's the only thing they changed, right? Which is crazy. So they said, okay, it can't be her dad. It has to be her stepdad. Yeah. But they were completely fine with everything else that happened in this book.
It's crazy that it's allowed at the time, isn't it? It's because books aren't as censored as the movies and such.
Yeah, and I guess they always, haven't been. But let me make it clear, audience, that there is a scene in this book where a young boy strangles a cat out of weird sexual frustration as he is standing next to the dead body of a woman in the rocking chair because they have both been traumatized by peeking through the fence to watch a 9-month pregnant lady get gone down on by her husband. That happened in this book.
Well, I think because of the rating, because of what is the basically the people who I think it was in the 30s or whatever that came up
with the Hays Code,
and that really affected what could be shown in movies and in TV. But I mean, there were censorship laws with books, so it is kind of interesting that this sort of made the cut, because there were smut laws, and I think this really kind of toes the line with it. I mean, I am there's some things in it that are wow, they really put this in the book, so but it is.
I bet that they were really upset about like the young girl masturbating. It's probably what really bothered them, and not
yes, not the cat murdering. That's just boys. But girls can't be curious about themselves. So I guess what we can do, go ahead, because her life gets wild and sad.
I'm not sure how.
Yeah, once this comes out, it went off the rails for her.
I just don't know how much detail would go into, but basically, their marriage goes to the rocks. She finds a lover called TJ the DJ.
Yes.
Her husband basically, because her husband actually snuck into the room at night and took a picture of them having an affair and blackmailed him.
Oh my God,
it's amazing!
And in return for giving her the film, she funded him going to do a master's degree. But then later on, they her and her husband made up, and they tried to start a hotel called Peyton Place Hotel or something, but then it failed, and then they separated again, and then it leads down to years of alcohol abuse, and she passed away at quite a young age.
Because she really
make a movie about her.
Because she really didn't get anything though, like from all this soap opera money and stuff. She didn't get any of that because she had And she also she was not smart with she did not shepherd her rights and stuff. I mean, she had a variety of people who took advantage of her. It sounds like she was absolutely miserable, but at the same time, Peyton Place Hotel.
It's such an interesting thing because it is I mean, obviously there's comic books and things like that at this point and Walt Disney, but you don't think that you need to copyright and trademark Peyton Place, so. But you could also learn a lot more about it. We're going to have there's a link on our website to the FireStarters episode on Peyton Place. So you guys go listen to that and learn more about the crazy ass life of Grace Metalious. So we're going to jump into this wild plot, and I don't even know how we're going to do it because this book really is about a town. There's 3 main women who are the center of the book, but it's kind of about this town, Peyton Place, which I believe is in New Hampshire, kind of gone by the geographical clues because you can see Vermont over the the river and stuff. And this, just small town life and all the batshit crazy people who live in this town.
And it starts out super dramatically in terms of language. It's Indian summer sweeps in this and that. And I was oh dear God, I can hear the swooping strings, and honestly, it felt a bit like a Stephen King book a little bit, right? Because it starts out and it's got the teacher observing all the students and their little interactions between each other, and then it takes a while for anybody to fuck anybody. Seriously, I'm not reading reading this for like the teacher's evaluations. So there's Allison is I guess the main character, sort of.
And Allison, Selena, and then Allison's mom, Constance.
Yeah,
those are our three women. Allison and Selena are the same age, roughly. Well,
are they? Are they though?
And then Constance is the widow in quotation marks mother of Allison.
Well, maybe we should just go ahead and just like describe their families. Like that would be the way to go at this, because rather than you cannot go through this book event by event.
No.
Constance, Connie had and she runs the local clothing store. It's evidently very chic, and even though it has like kind of a trashy name, it's like, I don't know, like Budget Corner or something. That's not what it is, but it's something
Thrifty
like that.
Trends.
Thrifty. Yeah. It's weird. Yeah. It's supposed to be like the fancy place. But so she had
there, you know?
Yes. It's
but she had moved away to New York City when she was a young woman, and she had like kind of a thought that she could, I guess, marry the boss. I'm not sure, but she slept with a married man, Allison, and then she gets pregnant. She names the kid Allison, which is deeply weird. So how she decides to deal with it, like she calls her mom, and her mom is like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and this is an amazing plan. You're gonna come up here for the birth of this child, but you're gonna tell everybody you're coming up for my small private wedding. I'm like, okay, and then we're just going to keep we're gonna act like this child is a year younger than this child is. And so when were they? It doesn't say when they moved back, but this kid had to be like, you better be at least 9 to pull that off. Are you going to bring in your 2-year-old who's actually 3 and just be like, oh, she's really advanced? Like, what? How is that going to track? And then I thought, well, maybe everybody else is having these like fake premature babies because they had shotgun weddings. So maybe nobody knows how old anybody is, and they all smoke when they're pregnant. So like these kids are all just, any given age and of any birth weight, who knows? And she's like, that's how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to tell everybody that my husband died and I'm a respectable widow. And so she's got like a picture of Allison the First on the mantelpiece. She tells the kid that that's her dad the whole time, but she's terrified constantly that somebody's going to find out, to the extent that when somebody comes in from New York, she's terrified that she might know them from New York City.
Yeah. So paranoid.
Yeah. Like, what are the odds?
Well, the dad did die. He did die. He, like, they say in the book that he was like, I mean,
that's true.
Shit, but at least he's a responsible shit, because when she's like, I'm pregnant, he's like, I got another family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he like sets her up in a house and like takes care of her. And then when he died, he had left money for Constance and Allison in the will. So,
So yeah, at least he wasn't as bad as some of the people are in this book. Yeah. But yeah, so she's hiding like her deep dark secret, and Allison does not know is Allison's, let's just say, bastardy, because they certainly say bastardy in this book.
Yep, they do.
And Allison's like the dreamer kid. She's obviously gonna grow up to be a writer kid. Mm-hmm. And she's like a lot younger, I guess. Even than she actually is. She's like the more childlike, she's like the less mature kid. Whereas like, of course,
character.
Yeah. And Selena comes from like the other side of the tracks. They keep calling them the shacks. There's a timber mill. And so all these people like work in the mill, and sometimes they'll go and just like do timbering stuff in the winter, and then they'll come back, whatever. But like the important thing is that they pay their bills. But her stepdad has been her dad since she was a baby. Mm-hmm. So don't be acting like it's like the stepdad that just came in. It's her stepdad. Her brother has already moved out. Her mother is obviously like deeply fragile. Her stepdad is a terrible person who we know he beats them.
Yeah.
It's kind of clear if you're paying attention that he also rapes Selena. And then little Joey, I think.
Joey.
Yeah.
Joey's younger.
The younger boy. And so Selena, like, I'm sure school is a great escape for Selena. She's in a really, really bad situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the mainest of the main characters.
But she's very beautiful. She's very beautiful.
You wouldn't even know that she's like a slummy person.
Why do some of the characters say that she looks like the perfect gypsy?
Because it's racist as shit. That's why. I would have expected fat shaming out of this book, except that nobody's fat in this book. Yeah. So like that's like the one thing that's not in this book.
Well, hold on. They call Allison simultaneously she's skinny and small, but also they call her fat. Like the boys too. And I was like, I don't understand. Maybe she's still like puppy fat.
Yeah, she's still got the puppy fat in her face.
But yeah, so Selena and Allison are best friends when the book starts. The book starts in 1937 and it spans over, I think it ends in 45 or...
Yeah, because it goes through the war.
Yeah. And so Constance, who is Allison's mom again, is hiding this deep, dark secret, but she's also like wants to be respected in town, you know. So she doesn't love that Allison is hanging around with somebody who lives in the paper shacks. And then we have the town doctor, Doc Swain, who looks like every single like small town doctor in every single like American novel or movie. You know, he looks like Hal Holbrook.
Yes.
All look
yes,
like Hal Holbrook.
Like Hal Holbrook.
They look like. Like, and for those of you who don't know who Hal Holbrook is, he was married to Dixie Carter from Designing Women. And he was on Designing Women. He was also the old man in Into the Wild.
He played Mark Twain a lot, like a lot. Like he had a one man Mark Twain. If that kind of like, you know, anchors that for you. So he wears like linen suits and shit, even though he doesn't live in the South.
They even talk about him like when Tom shows up, he's like, well, holy shit, this guy looks like Planter's Punch, which is the drink for this book. In person, he looks like a real Kentucky colonel, like, you know, with the white suit, the silver hair, that kind of stuff. Well, he's the town doctor. He's been the town doctor for years. His best friend is, and Doc Swain is a widower. His best friend is the newspaper man, Seth, who is just a confirmed bachelor. And the subtext is that Seth is deeply in love with Doc Swain, or at least I read it that way.
Oh my God, that makes so much sense.
Yes, right? But these people, I guess this is like bowling alone, like how we don't have we don't have to interact with people who are not like us anymore. These people who have actually like deeply held, like they're supposed to be the moral center. Doc Swain is the moral center of the thing. Seth is he would like to be the moral center, but he's weak. And then, but they have poker matches with all these other like dudes who are like also rich dudes, but like some of them are shitty and terrible, and they still have like, yes, they all like each other.
Yeah. There's the guy, like another, like some of our other main people in this are, there's a lot of dudes with like what are
white
now
dude names,
like, or women's names. Like there's Leslie Harrington.
Yeah.
Who's the rich guy in town. He's like the Mr. Burns of the town. And then his son is Rodney.
And they're both garbage, just garbage.
Yep.
And then like I forget, like there's others that are in that circle, and I don't remember who any of them are. Yeah. But Leslie is Leslie's the big one. The interesting thing here is I guess this is where you can see Allison turn from a man's name to a woman's name, because I do know at least one male Allison, but it's like a family name, and so like that's flipped at some point, you know, and so now it's much more girls. Maybe everybody named their girls Allison because they really wanted their girls to have that Peyton Place experience in their lives.
Oh God, why?
You know what? I bet it is. Like, I do wonder like what the name. You know how like Friends, everybody after what Jennifer Aniston had the baby on the show. She didn't really have the baby. Rachel they named her, I think, Ava. Everybody named their baby Ava. Oh. You know, like how.
Well, like the big one is Madison. Madison didn't used to be a name, and then Splash came out. I am looking it up right now. So Allison name popularity, early 60s, and then like climbed hard through the 70s. So I'm assuming that she was on the soap opera, so that may have been But it's like non-existent for girls until like it goes on a graph.
It was the Khaleesi of the 60s.
Oh God!
Yeah, exactly. Or Aria. How everybody's like, Aria's the. So okay, so Selena and Allison are best friends, but Allison's a little bit like, even though she's supposed to be 14 or 13, she's really 14, but she skews younger. Like she still likes to go out and explore in the woods. She likes to read books. She likes to like use her imagination. And then her best friend Selena is, you know, kind of going through that. Liking boys, being interested in clothes. You know, she goes to Allison's mom shop all the time and is always just looking around, and Constance is always kind of giving her side eye at first, that kind of stuff. And they sort of drift apart as that summer, like that year goes by. Selena is talking to this is where I think, Grace is like, but kind of inserting herself came in, is that, like, though, how like there's always that one like upstanding young man in a school that everybody's like, he's gonna be a good one. He's gonna be a good one. All the girls like him. He's like the nice guy. His name is Ted Carter in this, and he's fairly well off. His parents are his dad's a lawyer, and he's been flirting with Selena, and Allison's just like, I don't understand it. I don't know how anyone can be with, like, why you would want this. Then there's Rodney, who's the same age as Allison and Selena. And then, what is the young guy's? Norman?
What's the boy? It's Norman. I want to
call him Norman because I'm just putting like a Bates Motel thing onto it.
No, it was Norman because we were wondering if that's where it came from, because Norman is smothered by his mother.
Oh my
and like
God.
Yeah, and like the rumor goes around that he was breastfed until like age 4.
Yeah.
And that his mother gets off on it, which is weird. But like he's not allowed to go anywhere or do anything. Like, he's very overprotected.
Yeah, people like, insinuate that the mom is like sleeping with Norman. It's a very Bates Motel situation. And he even like in appearance, but he's very pretty. He's very like, Allison always thought he was very pretty because he's very fragile looking, So they're all,
he's also arty
class.
Yeah.
He wants to write poems. Ugh.
Yeah.
So he's always getting beat up by Rodney. Ted is always kind of like, stop beating up on this kid. And then, Norman's like, be my friend. And Ted's like, no. But it's so you've got that little like this generation. Then you've got.
Well, and also you've got like because it comes up later, like as Allison does make another friend when she and Selena kind of break up a little bit. And her name is Kay or Kate or something.
Kathy.
Kathy, who is also just really wants to grow up and get married. And so all these girls, I do want to mention it because this isn't the thesis of our podcast, do spend a lot of time at the library looking at the romance novels, trying to figure sex out.
Yeah, they do. Oh, and they send away for books. That's the other thing because, God, there's so much. It's like, I don't even know where to jump. Okay. So basically what happens is Allison and Selena kind of drift apart because of boys. Mm-hmm. Allison takes Selena to like go look at her special like woods area, and Selena's like, "Bitch, people come up here and make out and fuck all the time." And,
Yeah, right.
And Selena's like, "No," she's like, so she stops hanging out with Selena, starts hanging out with this girl Kathy, who's only slightly better, like town class wise than Selena.
There's also a scene, I was going to say, before they quit seeing each other, there is this scene that, of course, to the reader is super important, where Allison is like waiting. Usually she doesn't go to Selena's house because Selena's embarrassed about her house. She goes like looking for her, and she sees through a crack her father like beating her, and then like rips her shirt off. Yeah. And so and it's clearly sexually tinged. Which is like, it's really, really, really obvious to the reader. Allison doesn't know what she's looking at and is like, she can't look away, but she's like also still kind of confused. But so put a pin in that, of course, because we're going to be back at that later.
Yeah. So, she starts hanging out, like Selena starts working at the Thrifty Trends or whatever it is, Trendy Thrift.
Like dress barn.
Constant, the dress barn. And once for some reason, once Selena stops hanging out with Allison, like Constance, like, I love this girl.
Mm-hmm. Why can't I gotten that one? I like this one better. Yeah.
Her mother always like, why is my daughter so weird? Any girl would love clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. She gives Selena much better. Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of like, I've got friends who, grew up. I think it makes me think of a one friend in particular whose mom is very, all about looks and things. And, one friend grew up like loving anime and liking, goth stuff. And she's like, I don't know what to do with this daughter. So it's kind of reminiscent of that. Like, what do I do with you if you just want to always wear black? And so she finds kind of like a kindred spirit in Selena, and Selena starts working at the shop. Allison gets sort of interested in boys for a hot minute when she has her birthday party, and like asshole Rodney like grabs her and kisses her.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Because they play that game
He's
where
like, you're too big to...
she's like, I'm not playing, but like, I'll count the numbers out or something, yeah?
Right. She wants to be the bingo caller instead of like,
in a kissing game. Yeah, like
the kisser or the kissy, yeah.
Yeah.
And then like she kind of fixated on Rodney a little bit, and then they have a dance, and this is great
dance, yeah,
and it's hilarious. I thought this was the funniest damn thing because of course Allison is freaking out because Rodney like doesn't really want to like be there with her. She wants to be there with the town tramp.
It's a
Betty. Yes.
Yeah.
Best character.
And then like
awesome. She was the best character. The second best. Gladys, who shows up for a hot minute, is the best. But like fucking Betty.
They go to make out in a car, and she's like, "Oh yeah,
Betty
boy, oh big boy, yeah." Betty and Rodney. Like, is it hot? Is it ready? Is it hot for me? And she's like, yes, it is. And then she shoves him out of the car, locks the door, and says, go stick it in Allison then. It was beautiful.
No, she shoves him out, but she shoves him out by kicking him in his hard on.
Yeah.
What she does. She just like, she heel punches it because she's mad that he went to the dance with Allison because his parents told him that he had to go with a respectable, or his dad told him he had to go with a respectable girl, and Mr. Allison's Burns. A respectable girl. Yeah, Mr. Burns. So, and then, Allison kind of gets this taste of bitter disappointment because she sort of liked Rodney, even though he was like, Rodney's he's a sex idiot. Like that, Rodney's good for like one thing, and I don't even think he's good at that.
No, he's not. We know he's not.
He is?
Turns out he's a virgin.
He's a lacrosse dude. He's like an Ivy League lacrosse.
Oh yeah.
Like if he was in the 80s, he'd be the date rape guy. Like that's who Rodney is.
Oh God.
He's always failing up. Like his dad just buys him into the next school. Like he's that guy. And meanwhile, Allison's there at the dance, and the teacher feels bad for her and sits down next to her. That's how pathetic she feels. Oh, it's a bad scene.
She does dance with Norman. Her and Norman kind of get this friendship. So while the young set is doing that stuff, we have Constance, who's all repressed about sex. Like the times that she had sex, she didn't like sex. And then we have the Crosses. That's Selena's mom, and then her stepdad, Lucas. We have this insane... there's a guy named Kenny who's the gardener for the school, and his wife is just always running around.
He's a town drunk.
Well, is he the guy who talks to the bell?
Yes,
he loves the bell. So I think, y'all tell me if I'm remembering this right. So his wife went catting around again, or he thinks that his wife slept with his father. And so he locks himself up in his cellar of his house with 4 other dudes.
And they roll barrels of cider down there because they plan to go on a 6-week bender. Like that is the purpose. They have planned it. They didn't bring a toilet.
Did you know that's based off a real story?
No.
So
tell us everything.
When she lived in New Hampshire, there was a local police chief that really loved telling local stories and gossip. And this was one of the story of a bunch of guys who locked themselves in the cellar for a week and just got drunk. And she's like, oh,
that's
well, let's make it 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. And they've just been shitting everywhere. Just shitting and vomiting and shitting. And it's dark. And they wake up and there's no booze. And it's they get the DTs. The one of them has bugs crawling on him. And Kenny tries to get out, and he finds an axe to break the door down in the other direction. But he just hits himself in the foot with it. The whole thing it's in smell-o-vision. You can. God, it is the filthiest
I don't think this was in the
most important.
I don't think so.
The most important thing about this book, the thing that I will hold on to forever, is that the town sheriff who came and busted them out of the cellar after the doc was walking by. We'll get into that in a second. The sheriff's name is Buck McCracken. I love it so much. Buck McCracken. Okay.
He's not a bad guy.
No, he's just Buck McCracken. Like, you can't, especially if you're Southern, you can't say it fast. Like, you just say, it becomes
Buck McCracken.
So, yeah, you got to enunciate. So what happens is Doc Swain, like, all this is going on in the cellar once they've run out of alcohol. And, like, the one guy hit a bottle and then they fight over it and, like, I was like, God, the amount of, like, massive alcohol-dependent dudes you have in this town. I guess there's 4 of them. And, like, the one guy's cut his foot off. Or gashed his foot. So Doc Swain is walking home from his practice, and he sees kind of a commotion. And like he does say, he's like, part of him is like, I'm going to go over there because I want to see how bad of a mess this is. Because everybody in town knew that this was happening. It's one of those, like, well-known, we don't talk about it, but it's going on, So he gets there, and he finds Kenny, the gardener who talks to bells, laid out, just bleeding out. And he's like, well, he actually says, he's like, well, shit, that guy's dead. And, he's called, or he's, like, gotten people, he's like, okay, I've got to get some help. So he gets the sheriff there. And, it's one of those things where people start coming out of their houses. People start gathering around. Selena and Joey are there. And they see Lucas.
Well, their dad's down there, or their stepdad is down there.
Well, Lucas comes out and he's got massive DTs. He's the one seeing bugs. He's talking about bugs. So Selena is, like, literally having to be.
She's had 6 weeks off of this asshole. and then, God damn it, they get out of the cellar.
And
she was hoping he was just going to die down there.
Yeah, he comes running over and he's like, help me. And people are laughing because, like, just it's so comedically tragic. And you can tell she's just like, I wish that this man would die, Yeah. So he gets taken off. And that's when she kind of falls in love with Ted because he insists on walking her home. And she's basically like, just leave me the fuck alone. Just leave me alone. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he treats her still normal. So she really likes Ted. Mm-hmm. So that scene was wild. That was like,
yes.
We've already had, like, somebody whiting out a birth certificate, but then we get to this. Okay, it was strap in. Everybody strap in. So,
and the other big town news is that they hire a new principal for the high school as the kids are graduating into high school. And Grace Metalious wants to fuck this dude so bad. Like she wrote this dude to fuck him. I mean, like, well, evidently somebody like the principal of the high school sued her, I think. Wasn't it something like that? Because, like, it was that was, like, just this dude. Yeah. Like, it was.
Originally, the character's called Michael Rossi, right? But originally in the first edition of the book, his name was Thomas Macris or something, and that was legit the name of her husband.
That's the book I had. Wait a minute, that's the book I had. I had him as Tom. Yeah, I had him as Tom, because I
had him as Macri.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a big Greek, a big, like, 6'5" Greek from Columbia University. Yes.
I think maybe they changed it for the movie. Well, I don't know, because it's Macri in my copy.
In the British version, is a different name as well.
Oh, well, that may have sounded like maybe they printed that after the lawsuit. Yeah, it was Macri in mine.
In the British version, they call him Michael Kairos.
Wow. Oh. Because you would sue also, even if you were, like, such a big dick guy, because it's uncomfortable if that were your name. But this guy, he's real smart, he's educated, he's only in his 30s, but he, like, took a year off to go be a steel worker so he could understand the common man, and he's obviously supposed to be, like, the big dick hero of the book in a way. But wow. And he sees Constance and he's like, I'm gonna get that.
Yeah, he's like, that's mine. He's like, he shows up and he's like, that will be mine. And he's got that, like, just like that. Yeah, he's just got that. Again, everybody at Peyton Place is like, they're bringing a Greek in. first we got the Catholics, and the Catholics are like, first we got the Protestants, and now we're going to bring a Greek, And so he comes to town. Wesley is trying to like bulldoze him. He will, like, he's one of those, he's impervious. Like, he's kind of like Doc Swain 2.0, and that he's going to be the next town, like, moral center once Doc, like, passes off, but
he's definitely that physically powerful, that guy, like the very, very physical, very,
the most
flesh
of him
person.
We know that he is 6'5". We know that he has got dark hair, like he's, Greek, that he's got that tan, that he is very much, again, he's a little bit other, but he's in that acceptable range of other. Whereas when we get into, like, especially the story of how Peyton Place comes into, there's acceptable otherness and unacceptable otherness. And he's in that vein of acceptable otherness. So he's, he is sniffing around Constance. Constance has no time for it. While that's happening, we have the Selena issue. So Selena has been going steady with Ted. They're not doing anything. Like, they're just, they're good. Like, they're being 1950s good teenagers. But Selena falls pregnant. She's been working with Constance. And Constance notices, like, you're really pale. What's going on? And Selena's like, the only shot I have at this is, like, going to see Doc Swain. And so... She gets off work. She goes.
She knows. She's guessed. Yeah.
Girl, she's like, it's like she's a good 3 months, I want to say, probably. All right. So she finds.
Nobody can tell, but she knows. Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes to see the doc. She goes to see Doc Swain, and she tells him, and he's like, well, just get Ted Carter to marry you. And she's like, it's not Ted Carter. And he's like, well, okay. And like, finally he just keeps asking and keep hounding. And she's like, it was my stepfather, okay? It was my stepfather. And he's like, oh, shit. So you see kind of the battle within him because, obviously in the 50s, abortion is highly illegal, like, and
he finds it immoral as well. But then he, like, thinks, about Selena, her actual real life, and that, like, it is going to be ruined if she has
and
this
I think
baby.
It's like, I think it's really this, kind of, it is fairly... They never say the word, but he automatically from the jump.
They do eventually, I think.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, like, he's like, he knows that Selena has been raped by, by her father.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they say incest, and they say abortion, but they don't say rape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he knows, and he's like, he knows that she is essentially, not essentially, but like she's a child. And so he gets, it's in the evening. It's him and one nurse. He basically, and Doc Swain is one of those like gruff dudes. Like he throws papers all the time. It's like, rah, 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 rah. So he's like, get ready for an operation. And she's like, what's happening? And he's like, just do it.
Have an anesthesiologist or like what? I mean, like they have a hospital and I guess he's the only doctor at this hospital, but there's lots of nurses and there's people in the hospital. Like what are they in the hospital for? There's one, I don't know. But like, we're going to do...
He also got the one Catholic nurse. I was like, But so he's like, we're going to do an
appendectomy.
Yeah.
Does he have a line where he he met like these specialist doctors in the city? And he's like, yeah, I'm a specialist. I specialize in sick people.
Yeah. Yeah. He believes in being a generalist, damn it. Yes.
But you know what? I thought that was really kind of, in a lot of ways, this book is it reads modern. And that's one of the things because like you hear all these stories. I don't know how it is over in, in the UK for y'all, but like here, one of the things is like, the death of the GP, like, it's such a specialist after specialist. And like, they're already bemoaning it in this book in 1956, which I thought was kind of interesting. But so like,
he does kind of like the nurse, she kind of has a choice, but kind of doesn't have a choice. But she's like, this is, okay, forget the schmishmortion part. Is this actually ethical? We're going to operate on her with none of the things that you operate on people with. Like what happens if something happens downstairs? I'm the only person on duty. This is crazy, dude. And the dude's like, shut your bitch mouth. We have to give this girl a quote unquote appendectomy.
Yeah.
And they do, by the way, also take out her appendix.
That was super.
for free.
I think that was super.
I got time.
Yeah. Throw it in.
I thought that was super baller. I thought that was
shorter than I thought.
Yeah.
because the nurse isn't an idiot. She's like, what did we just do? And he's just like, like the way it was written was like, she knows what they did, but she's like, what did we just do? And he just like, as she says that, he plops the appendix down. He's like, we took out an appendix. And I was like, all right, that's sort of cool, you know. I was like, but so it's like their big secret. Like, you know, he's like, I'm not in it. But then what he does is he goes, Selena's in the hospital, and that night he goes to the house, the shack, and he basically tells Lucas, you know, he's like, I know what you did. You need to get out of here. And then, I mean, I don't agree with it 100%, but I liked it. Like, he's like, I have a written confession. You're going to sign this because in my just in case file. And then, you know, Lucas is like, well, I'm not leaving. This is my home, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, we haven't had a lynching in a long time. And I was like, oh.
I know. Yeah, she says that.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And he's like,
yeah, but we could have one tonight if you would like.
He's like, I'll turn everyone against you. And I was like, well, what about how Selena feels, you know? But he gets him out. Like, Lucas leaves. And so for a while, things are great. So what happens is Selena, like, goes back to work. She's doing great. Nellie, her mom, goes to work for Allison's mom, Constance, as their maid.
She's a house cleaner. Yeah. She does a lot of work around the town. But so Nellie she'd been like vague, okay? Like and this is where like the crummy depiction of mental illness comes in. Yeah. She'd been vague, and she'd been like, she obviously had problems mentally, but and she does hear all this, the doctor's conversation, and then Lucas is leaving. So now she goes on and on. Like, she used to go on about how much she hated her husband. Now that he's gone and she heard all that, and she didn't know, it never says anything about her knowing about Selena, but I guess that must be part of it. Now she talks about like,
she blocks
how
it
much,
out.
Yeah. And how much she loves him, but she's also got this feeling that she is ill in some way, like physically ill, that she has like pus under her skin. And she talks about it all the time, and it's obviously like an obsession with her. And she's got like this, you know, this sort of imaginary like lump in her head and stuff. So she is deteriorating massively and not able to care for Selena at all, of course, you know. But she's still like a good housekeeper, and so she's able to like keep her job. But she works in Allison and Constance's house, which is important for an amazing night that we have later.
Oh my God.
That's what I started to break, is that thing. But we're not there yet, but oh my God, it's a decent.
I mean, y'all, we're a good, you know, with that, it's just, like, y'all, we're a good full 50 minutes into the 45 minutes in this podcast, and we have not even gotten to the shit yet. Like, it gets bananas. So
it starts to get bananas now.
Yeah.
All right. So Allison in high school has been like semi-catting around with Norman. Like, they're BFFs. They're little artsy kids that ride their bikes and they go and read poems to each other. And they're both very fragile and very blonde together. And it's very precious. There is like, so she's really close to Norman. She has to hear Nellie constantly berate Norman, like talk about Norman and talk about like Norman's like relationship with his mom, and she gets defensive. Her new BFF is Kathy. Kathy's in love with this guy named Lou, and Kathy's just like the happiest, best of us. Like Kathy really ends up being a fucking trooper in this book. So
yeah.
And then
Kathy has a boyfriend,
Lou, yeah. And then Constance has been entertaining the thought of, you know, Big Greek Tom / whatever. Like, what was his name in your...
Big Greek Tom just will show up and say...
Well...
Sorry?
But what's his name? Is like, what's his name in the...
Oh, it's like Michael Rossi or something.
Yeah.
Tom, the American Tom.
Yeah.
He'll just show up and say, guess what, we're going on a date. Allison's out, let's go. And she says, I don't want to. And he is like, get your shit. And she does.
Yeah.
This is what Grace wants.
Yes, this is what Grace wants.
Yes.
Well, so they go on this kind of kind of great, kind of like, the way that he's browbeating her is not great, but they go on this lake swimming date where like he's all like they go swimming in the lake and she's got her bathing suit on, but then he's like, I want to see your tits. Like, like he just, oh my God. And they had been having sex by this point, I think. But he's very much in charge.
No,
was that the first time they did it?
This is a flashback because they're like driving by it, like the lake on the way to a restaurant, and he's like, "Don't think about it," because it's a flashback to their first like time.
Yeah, some of these things are done in a strange time order. It don't really make any sense as to why she's writing it that way. But yeah, so then they get home after that, and she kind of says she doesn't want to, and he like slaps her, and then that's why I said hard ravishing. She's definitely into it by the end of it, but she definitely says no in the beginning.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And we're supposed to think it's like good for her. It was a trifle upsetting, but nowhere near as upsetting as many of the things that happen in this book.
Again, it's like 1950s romance. That's how Richard got his wife, like,
Please don't make me think about Richard Nixon's dick. Please don't do that.
Basically Tom/Mike was like, I'm gonna use this big Greek dick to like fuck the frigidity out of you. And that's kind of
it works, like, but she's
they've had I didn't mean to interrupt, but they've had sex since then, but it's been like, you know what, it's been like old married couple, like it's been not great. It's the night of the dead maid is when it all
well, okay, so they decided they want to get married. So, and they're serious about marriage, but she says, we have to wait till Allison graduates from high school. And he's like, what the fuck? We're not getting any younger. But Allison is very attached to dead Allison. Okay. So she's very, like, she knows it's not going to go well when they tell her about it. But they're like, okay, so what we're going to do is tonight we're going to go, you're going to make dinner, and I'm going to be there at dinner, and Allison will be there at dinner, and we will tell her that we are talking about getting married. We'll introduce the concept. Okay, so they come home, and we already know that the maid has hanged herself in Allison's closet. Okay, like that's Chekhov's dead body, and it's waiting to go off through this entire scene.
Chekhov's
and Allison,
amazing.
And Allison says something really fucking shitty to her.
No,
that's not why she committed suicide.
Back up. It's like, again, it's all crazy. So Allison, right before she went to go hang out with Norman, had said something really shitty because Nellie had made fun of Norman again and talked about how, I bet he's fucking his mom. And Allison, like, instead of just being like, this is a fragile woman, like, just says awful things to her. She's mad at Kathy because Kathy wants to stay in Peyton Place and marry Lou. And, Nellie's being Nellie. And so she just goes ham on both of them. And then she and Norman go off.
Yeah, she uses the word crazy as a weapon,
Yeah.
Like she just you're crazy. You're just crazy, and you are sick. And she's just like it in the kind of meanness that teenage girls have. Like the very accurate nastiness. Yeah, just spiteful. And then they leave it at that. And then Nellie goes upstairs and hangs herself. But it's not because of what Alan said. I mean, she's got many, many, many problems, and they are not realistically detected. But
she had blocked out that Lucas had raped Selena, and she'd been working it out. And then basically, as she's like going to hang herself, she remembers. It's an upsetting scene, like, especially like for people who have to deal with mental health issues, and also people who have family members who have attempted or succeeded in committing suicide. It's not well done. Like, and again, like Sarah said in our trigger warnings, like, there are things in this book that are legitimately upsetting, and that's one of them. But the absurdity that comes to it next is why I could be like the dead maid. Because
so I'm not laughing because a character died by suicide. I'm laughing because of everything else that happens. And I was cracking up dying about this.
Allison is out with Norman, and y'all, for a hot minute, I thought like Alice and Norman were going to be a real thing because Norman had sent away for a sex book. Do y'all remember this part? Like Norman had sent away for a sex book.
Yes.
Describing things.
Yeah, one of those like marital guides. Yeah.
And then he's talking about orifices and is playing with her ear. And I was like, get it, Norman. Like Norman is doing it. And then, and then it just fell apart. But
Norman's mother comes between them. Yes.
Yeah. Well, no, she was like, I want you to kiss. She's like, why can't you kiss me like Sex City at, Roddy? I was like, just tell him. So they're out and they're out past. They wanted to watch the sunset. And Constance starts freaking the fuck out, thinking that Alice is going and banging it out with Norman. So she calls Mrs. Norman.
Because, she's afraid she's going to get pregnant, Yeah,
but she's putting her own shit on her kid. And Tom is like, He's like, he's like, you're putting your own shit on this kid. And so she calls Mrs. Norman, who just shows up at the house.
Well, no, Tom first has a monologue about how he thinks it's fine for teenagers to fuck. This is the high school principal, by the way. That no, it's very healthy if Allison is out getting her asses hauled. Yes, but that's not what Constance needs to hear. So then for the rest of it, she's like, well, you just had to prove your little theories about kids fucking, which is probably the healthiest thing that happens in this book is that teenagers having sex.
And then Constance shows, or Mrs. Norman shows up and gets into a literal slap fight with with Constance. So it's like two pinned up women just smacking at each other, and Tom's like, ah.
And Mrs. Norman,
Alice.
It's like, my kid wasn't out with anybody. This is all a secret to Mrs. Norman. She has no idea that her son is speaking to another human. He just, and she doesn't like it. And she's very upset, extremely upset. And then the kids come home in the middle of it.
Yeah. Norman is very much like Eddie from It. With the mom who, she was like, oh, you're asthmatic, that whole thing. She just wants him to herself always. So they, the kids come home. Allison's like, what are you doing here, Mrs. Norman? And she's like, where's my son? And she's like, he's at the house. And so she goes running off. And then Constance just unloads on Allison. And basically, in a fit of fucking spite, tells her, you're just a bastard. You're a year older than I told you were. And I had you out.
And you just think about sex, just like your father, who was a shitty piece of shit and was married. And, and I'm sorry I fucked him. It was like, whoa, lady. Whoa.
Tom is just, Tom's like, oh, he's got that face of holy shit. So Allison goes running.
Tom out. And he's about to leave, which would have been terrible because, you need an adult in this room in a minute because she starts screaming. And he thinks at first that she's only just started to really think about what her mom said. But no, it's that she opened the closet door.
It's so fucking bad.
Because, Constance thinks that Tom is leaving because he found out about her. But, she's like, no, he says, I'm not upset you lied. I'm upset that you would ever say that to a teenage girl. What is wrong with you?
You thought me wanting to have sex is bad?
Yeah. Oh, my God. So, all of a sudden he hears Allison scream once, and he's like, okay, she's just being a teenage girl. And he's like, then she keeps screaming. He's like, that's not normal teenage girl screaming. So he goes upstairs, and there's a dead maid in the closet. And he's like, and then as soon as he gets up there,
Tom,
God, really, this motherfucker cleans it all up. So as soon as he gets up there, Allison just does
we're not there yet.
She just, she falls over. And so he carries her downstairs. Constance's like, what's happening? He's like, you got a dead bitch in your closet. Dead maid in your closet. So they call in Buck McCracken.
Well, when you got a problem, what you got to do is you got to call Buck McCracken.
Buck McCracken. And also Doc Swain, and Doc Swain gets there. Allison's like laid out on her mom, it was kind of like, again, sweet in a way. I mean, dead maid way. That like Constance is sitting on the
yeah.
Yeah, but Constance is.
Well, wouldn't you? I mean, Jesus.
I would.
Yes.
I wouldn't even have screamed. I would just fainted the first time.
Yeah, that'd just be it. Like But anyway, this woman evidently this teenager has such amazing health insurance that she just stays for 2 weeks in the hospital because she saw something scary. Do you know what has to happen to you in America to spend 2 weeks in the hospital now? It's not having a baby. You're out in 3 days. No, it's not like, my husband was out in 3 days with major surgery. No, you have to. I don't even know what has to happen to you. Long COVID. You have to be on a ventilator to stay in the hospital. I feel for 2 weeks.
You know what? I feel like Tom just like passed Doc McSwain. Like he's like, here's a cup of honey, because when they get back to that, like after Bob McCracken comes to get the dead maid out of the house. After dead maid removal, what happened is that Tom.
I mean, we don't even know if the maid is removed yet.
They have the hottest. They finally have the down to business sex, and Constance is like, "This is what sex is." I didn't know. All it took was like terrorizing my daughter.
Well, I mean, he makes her say, like, tell the whole truth. And the weird thing is, you only find this out in like in a flashback, because like they're not talking about the dead maid who hanged herself in your house. They're not talking about the daughter that is traumatized by you and then finding the body of the maid who died by suicide in her closet. No, they're talking about, so what happened in New York? You had to say everything to me. Like what these people's conversational priorities are not mine, I guess. They have different goals.
Truly a Peyton Place, yeah?
Yeah, only in Peyton Place. There's a Peyton Place up in there. And then they fuck. They fuck in the room, I assume, next to the closet where their maid hanged herself like 30 minutes ago.
Oh, God.
What the fuck?
Here's the thing. I'm no medical. Like,
you don't want to say bitch because she died so sadly.
But that bitch had been in the closet since like noon. She'd been in that closet since noon, and like we're in summer. I don't know
air conditioning.
You're gonna start. Yeah, there's no Singapore air conditioning. So I don't know like to what rate she's gonna start stinking up a damn room, but like
yeah.
They were just like, they're my natural instinct. One, if I ever have a maid, I'll be doing this too. But two, if I find said maid dead in my closet, I'm just getting Chardonnay drunk. That's the only reason.
Yes.
It's like, yes. It's time to get Chardonnay drunk. Like, I've just got to be that person. Like,
I don't think I would have the extra capacity to hop on that dick. I don't know. I mean, I guess people deal with trauma in different ways.
Well, maybe that's what changed her.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. That's just, sometimes you need like how when people are hysterical and they need a slap in old movies, maybe that's it. You just need a, so that was the first completely over the top part of this book that made me start calling people into the room and telling them, you will not believe what happened. Okay, so imagine. And then after this, it just goes. It just goes, y'all. It just.
Well, hold on. I do think like one of the things that was really nice was like, okay, so Allison is in the hospital for 2 weeks. And part of it is like shock, but she's also dealing with an overwhelming amount of guilt. And I thought like what's weird is like they handled the suicide thing really terribly, but the guilt part like was handled really well because she tells Doc Swain everything that she had said to Nellie. And, he was like, you didn't do this. He's like, this isn't on you. And he was like, you've got to get out. You've got to start talking to people. He's like, things lessen over time. You're not going to be this upset forever. And I thought it was really good, like, trauma advice. Like, that was like low key, really great, dealing with trauma advice. I mean, and then what happens, like, totally.
Well, they tell a lie. Oh my God. Yeah. So they tell a lie, which is how they deal with everything in Peyton Place. They just come up with a good lie about it. And the difference between Allison and Selena is, so the doctor says, I knew and nobody else knew she had cancer. She was dying. And Selena's like, you are full of fucking shit. But won't say that. But like, she knows it. Whereas Allison's like, oh, thank goodness. You know, like it wasn't me. So like Allison will believe that lie. Whereas Selena's seen some shit in her life, right? I guess now Allison has
also,
too.
I think like
because
Selena also. Hold on. But Selena also did say like she appreciated the lie. Yeah, like you know.
Yeah. That was kind.
Yeah, like
because the suicide is clearly really shameful. Like the suicide is something like it's really bad for Selena. There's a fight about who's gonna bury her because the Catholic Church obviously is not gonna bury her in consecrated ground because, especially, I mean, we're still assholes about it, but like this is pre-Vatican II and things are like super strict, and the Catholics are like, nope, we're not taking her, and then they went to the Protestants and they're like, we're not taking her, and it ends up being the Protestant pastor has its own problems where he wants to be Catholic, so that may have been somehow involved. The whole thing was very weird.
Like, what's wild in this book is the best church in this whole town is the fucking Pentecostals. The Pentecostals who say Kenny. Like,
there's some like they're new and in some shack somewhere, and they're like, fine, we'll fucking bury her.
They talk about how religious everyone was near the start of the book. And the fact that
but then like none of them are. Yeah. They're all about their little about their organized religion. And that's the other thing, like, why we love Tom is that he doesn't like organized religion. And, like, religion doesn't, like, I think in this book especially, it's like religion doesn't equate to being a good fucking person because they're all garbage people.
Yeah, if anything, it talks about the hypocrisy of them.
Yeah. So they finally get Nellie fucking buried in the Pentecostal church and... You know, they get Allison out of the house. And, like, while this is all starting, they're talking about, like, bad things. And just, like, you know, that old adage that bad things come in threes. So we've got this, and then we've got, like, these other things that have happened. And then all of a sudden, it's been a really dry summer. So there's forest fires. But you know who doesn't give a shit about forest fires? It's Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns
is like, I put my... Mr. Burns is like, he's like, I bought a fucking carnival. Because I like to spend my money, and we're going to put on a fucking carnival. And he's like, I don't care.
I actually got the impression that he just really loves carnivals. Like that was his like one love, like the one pure love in him. He got rich and he bought a carnival, and he makes it come to Peyton Place instead of like some place we can make a lot of money, like on the big holidays, because he just loves a fucking carnival. Like, okay, fine.
Yeah, but your town is the town is on fire, and he's like, I don't give a shit.
Like everybody's coughing all the time.
Like COVID can happen, he'll be like, I'm having a carnival, damn it.
Yeah, he's having his carnival. Exactly. What? Wear a fucking mask or don't. Freedom, you know.
He's like, it's like, oh.
This whole chapter is obviously like Grace is smirking through this whole thing because she's like, well, afterwards they would care about that, and after everything that happened, this would come up again, and something awful. It's like this cautionary tales for terrible children kind of like feeling to it. They get Allison out of the house. Whoops, with her friend Kate, Karen, her. Kathy, and
Kathy and
Tom,
Lou,
and Tom is with them. And they're like, "Let's go in the fun house." And Allison is just like, she's overloaded. She's like, "I guess I had to make these people happy. Fine, we'll go in the fucking fun house." And so, for 20,000 different reasons, in a corner of the fun house, there's a hole in the floor that has not been secured to a mechanical room full of engines. Guess what happens to Kathy?
I just want to say, this was not in the movie, and I was like, what the hell's going on? What the hell? I was like, who are these characters they keep mentioning? Like, who's Kathy and Lou? And then it's like, oh, that's why they did this.
I read it as, like, y'all know those awful videos of, like, the people who get sucked into the escalator?
Oh, my God, I can't watch it. Can't watch it, yeah. There was that one, and I made the mistake of seeing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was like Kathy got escalator sucked, but like she fell down into this thing, And then was like, everybody was laughing. Like for one brief minute, Allison was having a good time, and we should have known. We should have known. It's not Allison. Yours is not to have a good time.
Well, somebody
to watch awful things.
It actually says somebody reached out to take her hand, which was no longer attached to her. Holy shit, Grace Metalious.
So basically, Kathy saw this thing and she's like, "Oh, what's this?" And puts her hand, and I imagine it as one of those giant gears. It just sucked her arm off. Her arm just was like, bloop. There's no arm. And so Kathy and Lou come running out. And Allison and Lou come running out. And Tom sees her. And Tom, who is the only father and the best father that Allison could ever have, she's just laughing hysterically. And he's like, "What the fuck?" And she's like, "Allison's arm just came right off," which I think is a very natural reaction for somebody who has dealt with so much trauma. She's just
the other kids all ran off. And it says, well, they didn't want to be witnesses. So, all the other kids just scrammed like fucking cockroaches when the light comes on because they didn't want to be called as witnesses. And there's just poor Allison there to, have hysterics. Well, Tom, I takes charge of the situation at least. And Kathy does not die. We don't see any of that happen. But, it becomes this big court case. And this is, if nothing else had disillusioned
Mr. Burns.
Allison, then this did. Yeah, and because they asked Kathy's lawyer was like, okay, she has one arm for the rest of her fucking life because of all these things where you were negligent, and it's clearly that he was, but everybody on the jury works in his mill, so she does not get. She got she had her medical cost paid and $25,000 or no $2,500.
Yeah, they asked they asked for $30,000 and she got her medical expenses paid, and she got $2,500. And Allison
and everybody knew it was his fault.
Well, I think what happened because he had everybody in his fucking pocket. Allison and then Tom were the only people to testify on Kathy's behalf. And, it's Allison who's a 17-year-old girl on the, witness stand, basically being cross-examined by lawyers, and being accused of things. And again, Tom trying to do the right thing. So yeah. But then, okay, so we have that.
And at this point, she writes stories for the newspaper now. And she wants Seth to run a letter to the editor that she's written about this. And by the way, she's supposed to be this amazing author, but all of her letters are 20 pages long, so that might be why I didn't run it. But essentially, he's too much of a coward to do it, and so that really disillusions her with all the people that she thought were on her side, that she thought were her friends.
Have we even talked about Norman and the fucking cat yet? Because Jesus Christ, we
no, that comes after Kathy's arm comes off.
Can I just tell you?
I think that
tell you how boring the movie is. The movie is 2.5 hours long. Yeah, the halfway point is them discovering Nellie's body, and very little happens after that.
Is it just picnics on the river? Is that just what they're doing for the rest of the time?
The river is the carnival scene, basically. Nothing happens in the carnival. I'm trying to go through it now. I'm I didn't even remember they have a carnival scene. But they do. They just have the guy giving a speech, and they're all having fun in the carnival. But no one's arm is chopped off.
So nobody loses an arm.
No.
So while all of this is going on, I know what y'all are wondering. You're like, what the fuck is Rodney up to? I'm worried about Rodney. So here's what the fuck Rodney's up to. He has knocked up Betsy, the town whore. Yeah. We can't agree. It's fine. So, and he just goes to his dad and he's like, knocked her up. And his dad's like, oh, okay, I'll deal with it. It is not a conversation. And this is the most Mr. Burns. I kind of love it, even though it's super evil. He sends her father a $500 check to get an abortion. And so it's 2 abortions in this. And then Betsy comes in and with the check in hand, and she's like, you're not going to do that to me. You're not going to fob me off with that money. No way. Your son's going to marry me. And you know what he does? He looks her in the eye and he writes a $250 check.
Oh.
And he hands it to her and says, no, he's not.
Yeah.
It is.
He's such a dick.
It's not nice, but it's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But everybody in the town, especially, okay, so yeah, Rodney gets one girl pregnant. His dad buys her off. And then Rodney goes to school, gets kicked out of school for
probably more than that.
Fuck idiot. He's just dumb. And his dad's all I just wanted him to learn a little bit. I can't believe you kicked him out for his extracurriculars. And they're like, yeah, no, sorry. He can't come back here. So Rodney's just being Rodney, drinking rum and cokes. He's getting rum and coke trashy is what he's doing. He's getting fucking rum and coke. We've all been rum and coke. We've all been rum and coke trashy, or at least I have been. Maybe I'm speaking but so Rodney's seeing this.
I have also.
Who?
Well, he's seen a bunch of different ones. Well, the funny thing is, when he gets Betty knocked up, that was actually like he lost his virginity with that. He'd just been lying. Yeah. He'd been like concocting these like these huge stories about his sexual prowess, and then he didn't even know you're supposed to put a rubber on. Like I think she was like, "You dumb idiot."
I think he really liked Betty insofar that he's liked anyone else. I mean, again,
yeah.
He's, you know what? He's one of those fucking like he gets off on crazy, and you know when she kicked him in his heart on, he was like, yes, because I remember he threw up.
I'm gonna marry that woman.
He threw up.
Yeah, he imprinted like a Gosling. Yes.
But so he's with.
But then she shuffled like exit stage right.
Yeah. So he's with rum and coke trashy girl. I mean, again, we've all been rum and coke trashy. Like, it just happens. And they're riding around in the
And what he really loves is his car. He loves the car.
Oh, yeah. They were going to do it, but then she wanted a hot dog.
Autosexual.
And I get it. I get wanting a hot dog. Like, she's like, let's go get a hot dog. And, like, they're going to get a hot dog, and he's all mad. And then she's like, here's my really, as Sarah likes to talk about it, like, how does she describe her boob? Like... She gives us a
hard. It is the hardest boob. Yeah, it is the least sexy description anybody has ever given of their own breasts. It's hard, baby. Like, you got mastitis. A, why are you leaving your baby at home? And then, like, B, you need antibiotics. Like you're not supposed to say hard about boobs. It's weird. Okay, it's weird, and quit doing it.
I don't think of pebbles when I think of boobs. You know?
Right? Yeah.
I look at rocks. Oh.
Touch them rocks, baby. Touch him good.
Old Rodney makes the rookie mistake of like the 1950s. He's like boobs and does like the complete like turn away in the car, and you know he's like he's honk honk, and then a literal honk honk happens with a truck coming and bearing down on them, and so like tits out, rum and coke.
That's it for Rodney.
She's like, look out. And then basically, he gets hit by a semi and Rodney is dead. And Leslie is sad. And we forgot to tell y'all, Leslie, like, straight up married this woman, made her get pregnant, even though she had, like, 9 miscarriages, and, like, made her carry Rodney to full term. And she had Rodney, and then she died, and he just didn't give a shit. Like, he gave no fucks that woman, like, died giving birth. That was really upsetting.
And the funny thing about it is, like, that was, like, his project, and once he had the baby, he was no longer in that project. So up until that point, Seth, the newspaper man, had been making good, like, town improvements. But then Leslie's, like, on with another project, and his project is, I don't know, city council fucking meetings? Like, if I had a ton of money, the last thing I would do is go to a city council meeting. But, like, then he starts to show up to these meetings and just completely cock block progress in the town. Just like, you want zoning? Guess what? No.
So Rodney's mother was like the ex-fiancée of Seth, right?
There was something there, and I forget exactly what it was.
Yeah, and I'm saying that Mr. Burns is just really corrupt because he would just be like, oh, if he wants anything voting, he'll just be like, he'll go to the mill and it's like, oh, if this was to pass, I might be in such a good mood I give everyone a raise, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
They can just control the votes.
But he didn't care about any of that while he was still trying to get a son. But once he got a son, then he wants to like run the town. So he does, which actually it is how these small towns, like especially in mill towns, totally work. Yeah. I mean, it's
this book,
even though these days the mills are gone. I mean, like it is.
It vacillated wildly from big like. Family. It vacillated wildly from car crashes with tits out girls to like zoning ordinances. And I was like, this.
Yes.
Oh, can I tell you facts about Rodney, though, before we move on?
Yes, I would love
Rodney facts.
Okay, so in the movie, he's actually like a good boy and he fights against his father to try to be with Betty. Right?
Huh.
Like it's a whole like almost like Romeo and Juliet story where he's like, oh, I'm not. He got pressured by his dad to call off the prom dance to be with Allison, but then afterwards he's like, I'm gonna leave the family, and he left the family and got disowned and went with Betty. But then he had to join the war, and he died in the war.
What?
Yeah, instead of a car crash.
Oh, that's.
I feel like they're whitewashing Rodney.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing was that Rodney had one of those jobs that was considered, because I'm glad you brought that up, because like his dad gave him an essential job like that, where he was like, exempt from draft in the book. So like Rodney was like,
yeah, I think that's,
and Rodney even says
like, oh, if you leave, you don't have that protection.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a glow up for Rodney.
He says in the book, like, it is true. He's like, no one else will admit it, but I don't want to go to war. It was like, fair play, Rod.
Yeah, that's for real, Rodney. Yeah, you get shot over there, right? They're shooting people in that war. Fuck that shit.
Oh, last fun fact about Rodney Harrington, yeah?
Yes.
In the TV show, right? He keeps like wearing like this like specific jacket made by this British company called Barracuda, and he got like the jacket got so famous that it got named after him, and it's what we call a Harrington jacket nowadays.
Really?
Yeah, it's named after him.
Bananas.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm googling what a Harrington jacket looks like.
That's
now.
we're gonna have to put that on our webpage about it. That's so cool. Like, it's wild how.
Oh yeah, okay.
How things like this just permeate.
Yeah, I would call that like a work jacket. It's like, I would call it Great American Workwear, except I guess British people have workwear too.
No, they just wear they wear just.
I thought they wear like bowler hats to work. Like if you work in a factory in Britain, you wear like a monocle and like a top hat.
Monocle
maybe?
is only when you're rich.
Well, if you're poor,
two outfits.
If you're a hitman, you can wear the bowler hat.
There's two outfits. There's
either you can be like a chimney sweep,
puffy shirt, or if you're walking in the moors, you have to have the billowy shirt and the tan breeches. That's the other one.
That's just
or the what do you call it? Like the it's like a coat, but it has the cape, the Inverness cape. You can wear that.
We didn't make the rules. It's what the Queen wants, so.
I mean, you guys
chose all the swans and also all the monocles.
She wants voting ID. So
yeah.
She wants voter ID. No, that's what.
Yeah,
like, it's really interesting how they changed that. Like how, again, I'm trying
to think what I would do if I were trying to make a movie that you would be allowed to put on screens in the 50s out of this book. And that would be a good idea, right? Because you want to have some kind of tension in this, and you can't put in any of the stuff that actually happened.
I don't know, but he's such an unapologetic POS. Like, that's the only likable thing about Rodney is that Rodney never pretends to be not Rodney. Rodney's gonna Rodney.
Yeah,
like
honest.
he's like.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like,
and
you know what you get with him.
And he's very realistic. Like some of these people aren't realistic, like Norman.
Mm-hmm.
But Rodney, we've all
Norman.
Norman. We've all met Rodney there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so Rodney.
So Norman update.
Oh God, yeah, you got to do the Norman update.
So this thing happens.
The best yeah.
So this thing happens with Norman that does not fit into any of the other storylines. But let's call it the deviant heart of the book.
There's a reason it's not in the movie as well.
Yes, you think? I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of movies from the time period. I've never seen this come up in a movie, though. So I think this is maybe, I'm suspecting that what this is about is trying to show, because, back in that time period, they were all about, like, how a mother could just, like, twist a son's sexual impulses all and fuck them all up. Just, like, fuck them all up. I mean, they were still blaming moms for, like, autism and all. And so this is definitely the Norman Bates thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Norman has like a neighbor who is like 9 months pregnant. She's very large, and she's like, "Oh, you want to like?" And she's always offering him like, "Hey, come in the." And this is completely innocent as far as we can tell. Like completely,
She's
this is not
nice.
weird and
Yeah,
gross.
she's just nice.
She's nice. She's like, "Let's have some lemonade. Could you pour it for me?" Like, I'm just like really off my feet today. And so he pours some lemonade for her, and they're talking about like, what is up with your witchy neighbor? It's like the witch lady who has the cat, and you always know if she's in the yard because the cat is always right next to her, because evidently she keeps the cat on a leash, which is crazy. And because the cat's meowing, and he's like, what is she doing? We can hear that she's obviously just standing there in the yard as we're drinking this lemonade, and the cat's meowing, so we know she's there. So he leaves, says, I had to go see my mother, whatever. And he's like, I'm going to find out what the witchy lady's doing. So she leaves out like to go do her errands, and he sneaks into her backyard. And he realizes, like looking around her porch, she has a rocking chair set up. And she can see like right through like a gap in the fence to watch the pregnant lady neighbor. Like, well, that's deeply weird. And then he's so the pregnant lady's husband comes home. This is probably the only like healthy marital sex we see in the entire book. So like the guy's like, how's it going, baby? And they're obviously like very much in love. And it is hard to kind of parse out exactly what's happening, but it does seem that he is going down on his pregnant wife. But although her body is described in the most repulsive of possible ways. But so, and then like Norman realizes like, oh shit, she's coming back, because he was a little too absorbed in the show. So he like sneaks down like between like the hedge and the porch. And he's terrified that she's going to look down and see him, because how are you going to explain this one, right? And then like when it's over, he like sneaks out, but then he realizes like, why is the cat screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming? So he goes back in, and the woman is dead. The old lady, she's just like stone dead in the chair. I guess she just couldn't handle the idea of cunnilingus. I don't know exactly why she died, but the cat is still on the leash and is screaming. So what Norman does is this deeply creepy strangles the cat to death while thinking about the sex act he just witnessed. And that's how you know that Norman is not an option for Allison.
Why was
like,
this
forget
the book?
I don't know. It does not further the plot. It does not further I guess it furthers that character. It just like he just marks him as literally the word is deviant, I think.
I don't think Grace I think Grace's like opinion on teenage boys are not very high.
Well, have you met teenage boys? I mean,
well, like, I think what happened, because like he talks about it, like the cat, like, he goes to pick the cat up and the cat's just scratching at him, and like it was just like the too muchness of everything. Again, it's like Holden Caulfield. It's just everything's too much, not too much. He just strangles a fucking cat, and I was like, oh god, And then
he just casually
Norman goes to war.
Caulfield does in his fantasies,
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's sort of like a symbolic orgasm, like a messed up. The thing is weird, okay? That is like the strangest thing that happens in this book.
Yeah.
And then it does make sense after that, okay, so like some of these kids go to war. Okay, so Norman goes to war, and he does actually go to war. And then he comes back, and he's like the first of the kids, I think, to come back, because he comes back with a wound. He has a cane, all these medals. Like they make it like Norman whatever day. I mean, it's like he's the conquering hero. And then and Seth takes all these pictures, and people are mad because he doesn't put them in the paper. The reason he doesn't put them in the paper is because somebody, like, I forget who it is, the doctor maybe, takes them aside and tells them, those aren't medals, those are ribbons. Which, I mean, like, you don't wear your medals usually, you wear the but anyway, like, those are bought and paid for. And I heard, I did a little checking, and yeah, he got like what they call combat fatigue. He snapped out on the front, so he did get shipped off, but he did not get hurt. He's kind of like limping wrongly. He doesn't know how to use the cane.
He's like that guy in that one Band of Brothers episodes that gets the hysterical blindness, like, like he gets that kind of like mental snap, and they send him back. So
yeah, so he is not Section 8 or something. Like he's not that he didn't go. He's not a total faker, but he's enough of a faker that don't put it in the paper because somebody's gonna notice.
Right.
So poor Norman just kind of lives out the rest of his life.
It's what his mom said, because his mom was like,
yeah, his mom did it.
Home. And she's like, I don't want people thinking you're a coward. I don't want people thinking you're like blah, 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 blah. And like she made him a war hero, essentially, or like what societal norm war hero is. And because he ends up like, he's got this limp and then the limp goes away and he just like, gets absorbed into town. Yeah, it was all about his mom not losing face. So she's the worst, and I wish that we could.
Yeah, it was a sad ending to a guy
who's decent.
It was, yeah.
He was decent, but he was very like he never stood up to his mom. I mean, how on earth could he have? But he was not able to, and he was stunted by his mother, and that was like kind of his ignominy. Like he just kind of like lives out the rest of his life, and that's it for Norman.
Yep.
But the real story for the rest of this book is what happens with Selena.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to talk about like after Lucas disappears and after Nellie is the dead maid in the closet, her older brother shows back up, who I think was Lucas's kid, because both Lucas and Nellie had previous relationships.
It was like a yours, mine, and ours thing. Yeah.
So the older brother shows up, and like everybody's like, he comes rolling into town, and everybody's like, look at this bottle blonde on his arm, blah blah blah. Gladys is the MVP of this fucking book, because Gladys and the brother, I can't remember his name. We'll call him John. If it's Joey,
Paul, it's Paul.
John. So Paul and Gladys come rolling into town. Everybody's looking at Gladys because she's got big boobs and blonde hair, and they think she's going to be a hoe. And this bee never has like a word in the book. She fixes up the shack, gives them plumbing, makes Paul spend all this money.
Well, she's quoted. Like everybody knows that she walks in and she says, "Geez, this place is a shithole." Like they actually say shithole. And it is a shithole, but it's written in a way that that everybody says. Did you know that when she walked in, she said, "Jesus, this place is a shithole"? Yeah, and then she's like, let's go to Lowe's. Let's buy some pipe.
She fixes that fucker up. Paul gets a job, and like he joins the war. Like he gets a job first. Like he moves to Texas. They get separated. Like. He leaves to go get a job, and Gladys stays until Selena graduates high school. And then she goes and joins Paul. But she just they show up and they just do straight up the right thing by Selena and Joey until they have to leave. And everybody was like, oh, this.
And a lot of people were saying, oh, well, why are they bothering to fix this place up? Because, dun, 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 the house is still owned by Lucas, who is theoretically out there somewhere. Nobody's heard from him since he left. But, so they're fixing up somebody else's house. They're not even fixing up a place that they can come live in. They're just, doing the right thing for their half-siblings. Wow, good job. I mean, people didn't even think they were going to show at all. They wrote away to them and just didn't think, they thought they were going to go into the home, the orphanarium.
They fixed it up, and it was wild because everybody just was like, they're just doing, can you imagine fixing up somebody? The thing about Peyton Place is no matter what you do, people are going to talk about it. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole premise, I guess, of a small town. So Selena graduates from high school, and she once Constance gets married and realizes the bonus is a big 6'5" Greek, bitch don't ever want to go to work again. So,
but she I was kind of impressed. She does not give up the store. She just hires Selena as a manager, but she does not give up the store,
And so Selena's manager, Joey's in school, and then one night, it's one really cold night, Lucas shows back up. And he's in the fucking Navy. And I was like, how is this motherfucker in the Navy? How is the Navy?
They were taking everybody.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't take Tom.
They were taking everybody. It was World War II. He had flat feet or whatever.
I think he was over 40, but I was like, Lucas's body is over 75. 6 weeks in a cellar drunk. Come on.
That's my grandfather. My grandfather was over 35, and like he was exempt from the draft because he had 2 kids at home, and they took him, but they wouldn't like send him overseas. So Hitler would have had to cross the Mississippi for Grandpa to fight him, but he was too embarrassed not to join up because people would have talked, right? So I guess they would take you, but they would put you in like Des Moines.
Both of my grandfathers had like real like the exempt jobs. Like one of them worked at a flour mill, and like they need flour production, like obviously for food. And then my other one was my other grandfather's a butcher, so they wouldn't take them. They weren't allowed to go because they had high needs.
You'd think that he'd have the skills.
He was
taking them Nazi scalps, but I guess
you would think.
You would think. But not so much. So anyway. It's a dark and stormy night. It's a fucking blizzard. Yeah, like it's windy and snowy. And this traveling salesman drops him off. So theoretically, nobody knows he's there. And he busts in and immediately just tries to fucking strangle Selena. Like it just, like there's no honeymoon period. There's no, like, he just walks in and he's either going to rape her or kill her. And I mean, it's going to happen in the first like 15 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
And so what she does is she kills the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Good for you with the fireplace tongs. Just like, and then she keeps going after he's like long not moving anymore.
Well, yeah, but then she fucking listens to a 13-year-old because like she's about to go call the cops. And Joey's like, no, don't call the cops. Like, don't listen to the child. Like, the cops aren't going to do, like, obviously. Everybody hated this man. Everybody saw him. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Dan and I joke that the little kid is the evil character in this, where he grows up to be a serial killer.
Yeah.
God, he was the worst. He fucked it up for her. So he's like, no, you'll go to jail, blah, 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 blah. So they ended up putting the body in the sheet.
Yeah, are you going to tell me when she still had those fresh bruises on her neck, if she hadn't called Butt McCracken and been like,
Butt
my
McCracken
father who used to rape me came back.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the shovel, you take the,
You know what?
done it right.
It would have been handled a lot quieter if she had called Butt McCracken and also, now I'm just calling
call the doctor too.
Like, and Doc Swain, like it could have just been swept under the rug because he was a piece of garbage and everybody hated him. But so she and Joey had the body in the sheep pen, and then Joey's like, I'm going to sell my sheep and get hogs. Like, okay. I mean, hogs will eat a damn thing.
And they burned they burned the clothes. Like, hogs. Yeah, absolutely. You should get hogs if you got a dead thing.
Yeah, I've seen Hannibal.
If you're ever gonna kill a person, take it from the person who wrote I wrote a whole thing about, hogs. Like, if you ever go kill a person, get hogs. You need a bunch of them, but get some hogs. Like, you don't have to burn the clothes. You don't have to do any of that shit. The hogs will just eat it. They'll just eat it. They're awful. They're gross creatures, but
whole hog.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, So, but
that's why we call it nose to tail eating.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the pig necessarily.
Do you know about the real case this was based off?
No. I mean, I'm sure many young abused girls have murdered their horrible abusive fathers, but I'm assuming there's a specific one.
Grace Metalious got the story from the same place she got the basement a cider party story.
Is Butt McCracken.
Oh, that dude needs a credit in this book. Yeah.
Apparently, like there's like the same thing happened in like 47 where this girl and her little brother had a really abusive father. And he was in the Navy and he would just disappear for months at a time, right? But then when he comes back, he just like sexually and like violently abused them, and he's just like really angry for no reason all the time, right? So she was just like busy trying to get by managing the farm on her own as a little girl, and it was like he was gone for like months at this time, and she's like, okay, Christmas this year will be a quiet one at least. And then he sent a telegram like a week before Christmas saying like, I'm coming back, pick me up from the train station, right? But the car they owned broke down months ago and they couldn't afford to fix it. So she tried to beg like random people in town to help to try to pick up her dad because she knows he'll be pissed if she doesn't pick her up. Because the station to their house is like a 10-mile walk or something stupid like that in the wintertime, right? So she failed she couldn't get the ride. So when he arrived home, he was really angry and then immediately strangled her, just like in the book. And that's why she like fought back and shot her dead. And they did the whole thing as well and put it in the goat pen or the sheep pen.
Oh, wow.
And she had no one realized, but then like her 2 older brothers came back from the Navy, and it's like, where's Dad? He hasn't written for a while, and then they figured it out that she did it and turned her into the police.
Oh, wow.
But, it was
what a bunch of sons of bitches.
And, yeah.
I know, right? Well, literally.
Yeah, but she actually like told the sheriff of like how his dad abused her in the past. So the sheriff came into her defense in the testimony in court, and then like
Buck McCracken would have had your back.
Yeah, and then the tons of local journalists actually exposed all the fact that he sexually abused her as well, and she eventually got let go and got freed.
But see, that's similar to what happens here. But then, like, to take the long view, this is not a win for her, because now, I mean, like, you know, now people I think have a little more sympathy for victims of sexual assault. But back then, like, okay, so let me reveal what happens. Like, they get away with it for a while, and even though the investigators come, like, there's no evidence. But then some meddling fucking kids find a burned uniform in the woods. Like, oh, Selena, okay, get it the fuck together, burn it all the way. What's wrong with you? But anyway, they catch her, and there's a trial. And so it's not looking good for Selena until old Doc comes out with his signed testimony. He's like, guess what?
Yeah.
All right. I hope to never have to do this. But it turns out that I did an abortion on her, which, of course, is major punishment for him, although we all know nothing's going to happen, because he raped his daughter. So it was justifiable homicide. And everybody's like, fine. It's fine. Just let her go. So the thing is, like, now for the rest of her life, if she stays there, or even if she doesn't stay there, because it was a huge, like, there were journalists including Allison, we'll get back to that, from all over. So she's now in the papers as far away as New York City as being the girl who had an illegal abortion because her stepfather raped her. How do you think life's going to go for her now? Like, that's not great.
Well, I think what was the saddest part of the whole thing was, like, you know, stand up Ted, like, you know, when she's in prison or whatever, shows up and she's like, you're not coming back here. And he's not. She's like, because even if I get cleared, I'm going to have this, like, this stain of whatever around me. And you don't want that for your fancy living. I do think, like, since Connie's gotten that big, like, amazing Greek D, like, Connie's a real one, and, like, Connie's keeping her at the thrifty shack, and, like, you know, and I do think, but I do wonder, like, because, you know, Doc Swain, like, you know, when he was, I mean, obviously you don't want your business out there, but I do think.
Well, I mean, they would have hanged her. So,
well,
you know.
I think Selena's going to be okay. Like, I think, like, she's enough of that town that, like, I don't know. It is an interesting thing. Like, I think anybody who's going to want, like, I think Selena is being set up to be Connie 2.0, and that hopefully, and, like, I do wonder, in, like, if in Return to Peyton Place, if, like, a big strapping Greek comes for Selena, you know, like, doesn't care about.
I mean, if I were her,
you know what I mean?
You could still change your name and disappear in the 50s.
Yeah,
you know, I wonder, like, if I were her, I go to New York City, I would disappear, and there's no more Selena. You know, like, you would almost have to do that. Because,
like,
I think the real life version, Barbara Roberts, did do that. Like, I think she successfully got away from the media attention, and because we can't find anything about her afterwards, so that's a good thing.
Yeah,
because once you're in that kind of high profile case, everybody knows, and if you don't know, somebody will be very happy to tell you. You know, like if you make a reference to it, then you're gonna fill him in. You know, like the new girl at work. We were talking about Mexican restaurants, and she didn't know that the dude who owns all the San Jose's shot his wife's lover in a car a couple of years ago. And, like, oh yeah, I filled her on that with a quickness. Now she knows that. So. So yeah, like scandals in small towns or even medium-sized cities do not die.
Yeah.
They stick around and they attach to people.
Yeah.
But I think like with Selena though, like the whole big difference between Selena and anybody else is Selena's never like she's never run away from that shit. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I think if anybody's
she's never pretended to be. Yeah, she's a tough broad. Yeah, I mean,
so
better it happened to her than Allison. Allison gets laid out for 2 weeks just because a dead maid falls on her from a closet. Toughen up, Allison.
And then, like, okay, so yeah, this trial happens in 44, and Allison's been away for a couple years. She's gone to New York, where she's roomed with a girl named Stephanie, but wants to be called Steve, and who's an actress, and she's Allison's writing. She's gonna write the next American novel. She meets her fucking. I feel like I could go into a whole fucking diatribe about Allison and her publisher / like obsession, whatever. So she meets this guy, Bradley.
It's her agent.
Bradley. Yeah, well, there's Bradley.
It's her agent, which is why it's interesting what you were saying.
So Bradley is 40 years old. Allison is basically 21, and especially like in light of all the recent shit that's been coming out, like that guy, like there's just so much about like grooming and things like that. Like basically Allison is being groomed is what's happening. He's like, you're
okay. I would disagree.
Yes.
I don't think, I think that she kind of, I think that she was very aggressive in the relationship. And I would not say that if I didn't think that were actually the case. Like she was like, let's go away for a weekend together. And he's like, usually you only say that to your agent if you want to fuck him. And she's like, yeah, let's go away for a weekend together. Like he kept trying to introduce her to young men. So he took the opportunity when the opportunity presented itself.
He never told her that he never said, I am married until after they fucked. He never said the words, I am married and have children until after they had sex. That didn't come up until.
Oh no! I mean, he's a piece of shit.
It out,
but I don't.
Yeah, no,
I don't think he was actually trying to fuck her.
Oh my god! I
think that he was happy to do it, but
no.
He wasn't gonna say no or nothing, but
But I think there's degrees of like I think like when we think of grooming, we think of it being in this one thing, but it's also like just dudes getting off on like a young girl fawning on them and like. There might
be some of that.
Yeah, like like encouraging that shit, and that's where it gets dangerous. And again, he's a 40 fucking year old man that took a 21-year-old out of town and fucked her. Like
Oh yeah.
And he had a wife and 2 kids that he did not expressly say I have a wife and 2 kids until after the fact.
I mean, it's not good behavior, but I don't think it's a Weinstein situation. It's not it's not super gross. It's only kind of gross.
What? I mean, Weinstein was basically just straight up raping people. Like he didn't rape her; he groomed her, I think. But like,
no.
So she'd been hanging out with this other guy, David.
Weinstein,
Yeah, he's a rural family member. I don't know. Do you think? I mean, like he's better. I was gonna say it's better than Andrew. He's actually a better person by far than Andrew.
Sweat,
That should just now
right.
That should now be the litmus test. Better than Andrew. Oh,
well, that's a pretty low fucking bar.
And better than
that's like easy limbo, man. That's like and she's written this book and like she wrote this book and it's about the actual Peyton, like because nobody will say who Peyton Place is named after. Everybody's all sideways about it, and there's this giant castle and nobody will talk about the castle. And so she does the work, and so it is this African American freed enslaved person who had like gone to France and married a white French woman and come back and built this castle. Actually, I had this castle like shipped back over, but the only word they use for this man starts with an N. Like the only fucking word they evidently have is that N word. It
also
is
an M. There's
the density of the N word.
There's also the M one. It's like
there's that one too.
People, so. We got that.
Yeah.
But
like that, like they don't know any other words. But so, and these people like brought this castle over here to have some goddamn peace in their life, and then like what's his name, Harrington, like his great grandfather like builds the fucking mill, and then the town like comes from there, and the castle is actually owned by like the government, but like it's the timber rights that are the important things. They have to kind of keep the castle up. So she's written a novel about this guy Peyton. But you can't tell if it's any good or not, because it's when she storms off after she finds out this guy's married that then she tries to ask, like, was the book any good? And the guy says no. But you can't tell if it wasn't any good or if it was actually just that, you know, that.
Well, he did say he was like, it lacked it lacked human connection. And so I feel like
he met him with her vagina, though. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to suss out.
But I feel... I do wonder if, in a way, like, this Peyton Place that we're reading is supposed to be the Peyton Place that she then wrote, you know, like, yeah. I can see that. I mean, again, I know that, like, the you know, like, the perspective isn't the same, but I felt like this book, I felt like was supposed to be Allison's book. All right, so this other guy...
Isn't a movie like that? Like, isn't the movie kind of her story?
Yeah,
we'll get in the movie later. We'll get in the movie. Like we got to finish this shit show off. Like, so she comes to Selena's. You know, she comes to the trial, and she's very jaded about what happened with Kathy. Kathy, who is like the realest fucking one. Like, Kathy's all like, Kathy no arm, having a like, you know, living her best life.
And she's got her
like,
babies with Lou, and she's fine.
Yes, she's great. Kathy is the best one out of all of them, aside from Gladys. And, you know, Allison's just disillusioned, but she's going to be staying in town to, like, nurse the heartache. And Tom is still being the best dad to her, and she's not taking it. Like, so they have the trial, and she's just dealing with her own shit. Her and Tom walk up to Peyton Place together, and she's like, I want to make up with my mom. But before I do that, I'm going to write a 20-page letter to this guy that legitimately loves me and put in it in express detail all the things that this 40-year-old man did to me. And, like, that'll show him.
Yeah.
And so her and her mom make up. They end up, like, you know, having a good relationship. And I think Allison realizes, like, bitch, you got the best dad out there. Like, this guy legitimately cares about you and wants, like, you know, the best things for you. And the book ends with, like, her walking through town and, you know, one of the neighbors being like, there's a guy from New York City named David here for you. And I'm like, David, get out, run away. It's crazy.
This is your last chance, David. This woman is not healthy. Every red flag you push out of the way on your way in is going to smack you in the face on the way out, David. Oh my God. Every one of them. So, you know, she's like an angry smoker. She just smokes like real fast. She just like,
I'm a writer.
So that's Peyton Place. That's what happens in Peyton Place.
Oh, God,
in the book. And so, yes, we're going to be talking.
So, you know, that Peyton Place, it's a real Peyton Place in there. It's just such a Peyton Place in Peyton Place.
So, instead of questions, because questions would take us approximately 3 weeks to like go through, we're going to do, instead of questions, we are going to be talking to Henry, who's watched the movie. I have not seen this movie. I don't think Sarah's seen it either. And we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between them. So that's going to be...
We started to watch it the other day, but it was a bad copy, so...
It's really boring.
Was it what...
I'm glad I watched the movie first because, like...
Oh, God, can you imagine going the other way?
Yeah, going the other way, it would be just... insane. Like we well, first of all, they cut out all the fun part, like the cat.
That wasn't in there. I can't believe it.
The carnival, we don't have. I don't think we have like cat. I'm not even sure if Kathy was actually a character.
Well, she barely was in the book either. She just existed to lose an arm.
She was okay with it though.
Like, okay, should we just go character by character? I guess.
Yes, let's do it.
It feels like the movie just like is like a really watered down, abbreviated version of the book because half the stuff in the book that develops the character is not in it. It just like goes really fast. The first half of the movie, an hour, is just they introduce the character. It shows that they don't even have. I don't think they even have them going around town doing that improv bit to develop their friendship. It's just them like, oh, they're friends, and they go to the clothes store, you know. And the mom's the character. The mom's really posh.
The mom is played by. I'm getting the cast. Hold on. Okay, hold on. It is wild because, like you did say, like in the movie, his name is not Tom Macris. It's whatever
something Rossi.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Michael Rossi.
Mm-hmm.
They made him Italian instead of okay. So Lana Turner is Constance. Like Lana Turner is fucking Constance. Michael Rossi is played by Lee Phillips, who is again Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And then for I don't know, Terry Moore is Betty. Who is Betty? Oh, she's
Betty.
Hope Lang is Selena. Yeah, and then a woman named Diane Varsi is Allison McKenzie. Like it's a bunch of people I've never really heard of. So okay, all right. So continue with our differences here.
But there's just
Seems
not
like
a lot
Lana
of differences. It just feels like things being cut, you know. The biggest difference is the what's the name guy Rodney Harrington story, I think.
Oh yeah. That one is
Yeah, everything else is still the same.
Does he die in the book or
in the book he
I'm sorry, does he die in the movie? Yeah, but does he die in the movie?
War.
Okay.
Yeah, in the movie he dies in the war, but then they have this weird scene afterwards where Mr. Burns goes to Betty and saying like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for how I treated you," and then she took her into the family. Yeah, and it's supposed to be like, "Oh, I should not have treated you this way when my son was alive," that kind of thing.
Did she have the baby, or was there a baby in the?
I think they have the baby. They don't have the abortion story in this either. I think she has the baby at the end. Yeah.
It's basically all of it. Like it's basically this weird sanitized polite version of this thing that's supposed to be impolite, and you know that's the wild thing about it. And I think Grace,
like, who would want to watch the movie of that?
She was so disillusioned by the whole thing because you know, like they had brought her on and like, but basically took everything that she wrote and just like, no, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. And you know, it's gotta be. I mean, she was.
Oh, I remember the biggest
bananas before.
Is that you know how Lucas just disappeared? Yeah, afterwards, after Doc Swain confronts him.
Yeah.
In the movie, he chases what's her name, Selena, and it causes her to trip and miscarriage instead of getting an abortion because they don't want to show. So they have to show that Doc refused to give the abortion as well. They don't want to make him a character like that, you know, that condones abortions.
Well, I mean, like in I don't know about other places, but in America, there was a like the first TV like kind of discussion of abortion was it Dr. Kildare? It was on one of those, or Perry Mason. It was Perry Mason, I think. One of those shows that was just always on. It was about doctors or lawyers or whatever. Anyway, they didn't have any advertisers for it. like nobody would advertise, but everybody watched it. But like nobody would advertise in the abortion episode.
There's a really good, I guess, like depiction of this kind of, you know, what abortion in the 50s and 60s was. There's a movie called hold on, it's got Natalie Wood and Steve McQueen, and I think it's called like Love Between. I have to look it up. It's like it's gonna drive me crazy. Hold on, sorry. Okay, Love with the Proper Straight. Yeah. Okay, so this movie is one of my favorite movies. So basically, it starts after the fact, and it starts with Natalie Wood tracking down Steve McQueen. They had met at a dance, things happened, and they're both from like really good Italian, you know, like or working class Italian families in New York City. And she tracks him down, and she's like, "I'm pregnant," and he's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "What?" You know, like, "Oh my God, we just, you know, you're the only person I've ever been with." And so it gets, they end up like ultimately falling in love. And obviously she doesn't have an abortion.
but they fall in love during the like process of trying to find and have an abortion, like him trying to get the money. And like the pinnacle scene is like they're in this like abandoned building, and there's like a doctor and a nurse, and like they said, like the doctor just basically is like, here's my coat, lay on this. He tells Steve McQueen to go sit outside, stand outside, and he's gonna do this thing that cost him like $250 in like whatever year this is, which is a lot of money. And like, Steve McQueen comes in, and like, Natalie Wood's in like it's very like still to this day, it's like a gripping thing. And just like what people have to, like when you don't have access to things, what you have to do to make these things happen. I mean, obviously it ends like happily ever after, but it's like it's a very real movie.
It's very,
and
like,
I think it
must have been controversial for its time, right? In the 60s.
Yeah. I mean, it might be one of the earliest where it's like that is front and center. Like that is a front and center feature of this film is abortion.
I want to watch it.
And it's a movie I really, really, really like. Like you're like, I know that these two are going to be disasters as like people when they get together, but it's great. But it's wild that they just, where they're like, well, we'll make her fall and have a miscarriage rather than having to talk about abortion, like. Yeah.
Intentionally trying to make it uncontroversial.
Which is weird because everybody knew about the book.
Yeah.
Like everybody knew about this book.
Yeah. I think it's again.
So like
I think it's one of those things where like the movies are supposed to be more censored than like the books.
They are.
TV shows are again more censored than movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was during what?
But I think it's as an American, what stands out about this book is that nobody pays for healthcare ever. You can get not just an abortion, but also a free appendectomy, just like extra. And nobody says a word about money. Like nobody talks about how this hospital is funded. These people will just go in for 2 weeks. No, what the fuck? Who is paying their health insurance?
Again, I'm watching this on the tail end of watching that Crime of the Century documentary all about the opioid crisis and how it's manufactured by pharmaceutical companies. And I'm like, burn it all, and just like, again, like, how legislation and big pharma, like just essentially have everybody, like just hamstrung, like, but, okay. So what do y'all like? How did y'all feel about this book? I mean, I know we don't have our questions, but like I really enjoyed this. And I think it's a really interesting, for me, it's a really interesting early version of like these kind of topics through, especially because the editor was a woman and the writer is a woman, like through a female lens. Like, I think it's a really great example of that. Like, I mean, again, it's ridiculous and nonsense and dead made during like the living room confrontation from hell. But I I don't know. I feel like there was that like, I loved all of, I don't know, like it was absurd, but it was really artfully done in its absurdity. You know what I mean? Like,
I have to say that talking about it has made me like it more because like when I finished it, I was like, I don't know if I like this or not. I really cannot tell because it was so like, I don't appreciate something that's trying to shock me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it's trying to be, whatever. But then like talking about it, I find a lot more affection for it in there, especially that this woman is like, you know what? It is 1950, whatever. And I'm going to write this scene about this kid murdering a cat after some old lady died of a heart attack because she couldn't take a little downtown action on a 9-month pregnant lady. I'm going to write that and I'm going to publish that and everybody's going to put it on their shelf in their living room. Guess what, bitches? Like that's kind of amazing in its own way.
I mean, the balls on Grace Metalious, like to be like, I mean, if you think about like the books that we've read, especially by like, in the 1950s by female authors, you know, they're very differently centered than this. And like this read like a man's book, but like from a, like, again, just doing it, telling it, saying it, making it happen. Like it took a lot to do that. And I really
I think if a man had written this, it would be a different kind of classic. Because now it's kind of like a trash classic. It's like a Valley of the Dolls. I bet if a man had written this, it would be more like Catcher in the Rye.
It'd be, it would be Catcher in the Rye. Like the legacy that goes behind it of like Alice, you know, if a man had written it, Allison would be Holden Caulfield, like, you know, but because it was a woman, we could.
Sorry, I say the book feels like the people on the right, let's say, like, oh, it's so amoral and blah blah. But then at the time, the progressives also was like, oh, this book is trash and does add nothing to the conversation. So, but I feel like it does add a lot. It tells it as it is, and it does tell you like, oh, it was really shit being a woman in the 50s.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you could get a big old Greek to fucking hammer you every night, that was the compensation. No, okay, what it purports to do is like rip off the hypocrisy of a small town and see what's underneath. Like move the rock and see what squiggles out. Mm-hmm. And I do think that it does that. I do think it's a bit of a mistake to go like so far with like the Norman character. Like some of that stuff is a little it makes it silly because like when you make it, you want to go so far with it because what you want to do is show something even more than what's really in a small town so that you kind of get the general idea, right? The same way that like in Deadwood, like you know that like Deadwood was well known for the salty language of the people who lived there, but at the time salty language was like, God damn it. So like, so they had to go farther to give you the idea, right? But so they're doing that in this, but I think it's kind of to the book's detriment. Like if they hadn't had the maid fall out of the fucking closet, that would have been a really awful scene with Allison finding out that she's an illegitimate child, which is important at the time, that she's the wrong age, that her father that she's always looked up to is not who she thought it was. But then it's completely overshadowed by dead maid in closet. So I don't want to like second guess somebody who made more money than I ever will, but if she'd like stepped it back a little bit and just restrained it just that tad, I think she would have maybe done a little bit more of a successful look at like the American psyche in small towns. But on the other hand, would it be as famous? I don't know.
Would it be as famous? Would it have been published? Like, I mean, that's the thing about, especially like being a woman author. There are like, I think what's really great about it is there's moments of like big over the top crazy things, obviously, but then there's like moments of like kind of quiet heartbreak. Like there's a moment where Seth, it's like there's a poker night and Seth and Doc are talking and Seth is super drunk and he looks at Doc and he's like, you're my only friend in the world, you're my best friend, you're the person that I love the most. And it's like, again, the subtext in that is like this man obviously yearns for this other man, and like we can't even like address it, we can't even talk about it. Like, you know, I thought there's moments like of that where you're like, fuck, this is like you wish that somebody had gotten a hold of Grace and been like, let's like get you off the booze and pills and like you know, like work on this because you write like. And also, like, that whole scene where Kathy loses her arm, that's one of the most, like, best horror build-ups that I have read in a long time. Like, I was like,
oh, yeah, it was good. It was real good.
I mean, bitches in a fun house, you know, like...
Who's it gonna be?
Her pacing and stuff is really good. And it's just, I mean, I think what's, like, to me, the real 50s tragedy of the whole fucking thing is that... This woman wrote this thing that was like, I mean, it's kind of a masterclass of like, it's like for what Sarah and I read, this is like early Sidney Sheldon. This is early, you know, Jackie Collins. Like this is the roadmap. And nobody took a hold of this woman and was like, let's work on this. Let's, you know, because it like basically she struck gold and she did like I said, like a 50 Shades / Twilight thing. And because nobody was there to be like, let's manage your shit. Let's make you whatever. She like burned the fuck out and died really young and sad. So.
Yeah, it killed her. It murdered her just straight out. Yeah.
Which you can learn more about at FireStarters podcast.
That's true. Yes, you should go.
There's a
follow the link.
There's a really dark quote when like when she realized her book was gonna get published. Was that like they said in the book? That was the last time Grace Metalious was poor, and also the last time she was truly happy.
Yeah, like oh my god.
Yeah, that's.
She's, I feel spent the rest of her life fucking the big Greek dick. It's a shame. It's a shame.
I think that the book is crazy because you can tell she didn't go out of her way to like, oh, this book is going to be so famous. She doesn't think that. She also didn't go like, I want to write this crazy feminist piece. She just want to write something she wants to write out of like spite for people she hates, you know?
yes, it is such a spite novel, and it is. Yeah, it's like sweet generous. It's like there's nothing like it. She's not aping somebody else. She's just like bam. It's like just like she just vomited like all of her animus against this small town into a book, and here you go. Are you gonna sell it or not?
I'm sort of obsessed with it. Like I felt like too. Like I felt like it was very like I said earlier. It's. For something written like to be published in 1956 that probably was written like we've seen publication dates from like 1954 to be the mid 1950s, like this book is contemporary as hell. Like I felt like I was reading something that could have been written now essentially. And I love that about it. I always get, as somebody who studied history, I get like my always favorite thing working at museums and stuff was when people would come in and be like, simpler times, and like, there's this like, almost like, I guess like this neutering of the past to like, it was so much, easier, so much kind of like, no, it was a shit show just like today. And I love that the book is like, hey, here's the shit show, like,
I would like all the Republicans who are like, back in the day, when make America great again. This is when America was great. Like, no, this is when kids were strangling cats because the neighbors had the hots for each other.
People getting drunk and stuff.
What the hell? Yes, they would just barricade themselves. There was no TV. That's why. There was no Netflix.
For 6 weeks.
Yes, you just had to shit in a corner.
I want, like, we might have
How do they not die? How do they not starve?
I don't understand how you can be drunk for 6 weeks like that. I just don't. And I mean, I'm Courtney, whatever.
And you were in a sorority.
All right. So fun fact, I did have a girl in my sorority who was like, her goal was to be drunk every single day for 30 days. And like by day whatever, I think she was on like day 17, like, because I was the RA of our sorority dorm. I had the key. I had the master key. Like that bitch, like got oh gosh, she was the worst. She would always be the drunkest and like trying to run over to a fraternity house. But like I had to like go and get like unlock the door and get her out. And then like I was like, no, you can't do this anymore. And she had a sober day. She was like, well, I guess I'm starting back from 1. And I was like, I can't.
Oh no.
Yeah. So in other words, you have done an experiment on this and it can only be done for 17 days. And also, I bet she didn't try to go the whole 24 hours like they did. There's no food down there.
She's not, she wasn't in a cellar. She was in a like nice, well-appointed room. She's not in that hard, like that's what I kept thinking about is that hard packed dirt that would just be covered. In
and those little bugs, like the antlions live in it. Yeah, and I mean they use the word feces, which I'm not used to seeing in a book from the 50s either. They say that the cellar is covered in vomit and feces.
Oh my god!
Wow. And they completely underestimated the amount of booze they would need. Like they brought like 4 giant barrels of cider, and of course, I mean 6 weeks is 6 weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks. Like even if you drink water, it's going to be more than that. Come on.
Right.
I mean.
You got to think about the Navy. You got to think about like Nelson's Age of Sail when you got to pack your grog for this shit.
Oh my God. And that's the other thing.
I mean, these people are not great planners.
If the grocery boy brought like limes or something, so they didn't get like fucking like scurvy. Because I imagine that cellar was like scurvy. That cellar was scurvy filled. Like, everything about it. Like, just
no. But they drank a lot of cider. I wonder if there's enough vitamin C in apple cider. Yeah. That might. But you're going to get something else. You're going to get rickets or.
Fun fact: back in my history days, like back in my history job days, like I used to go to this place, Alamance Battlefield, and they had a living history program, and I always had to go work the cider thing. And I was like, why do I have to do? I have to do that and fire the cannon. Like those were my two jobs. And so like basically it was like,
well, that sounds amazing. What is your complaint?
Talking about the bunghole on the side, like on the talking about cider as a form of whatever. But yeah, it always makes me laugh. I'm like, oh God, cider. But yeah,
I like any day where I get to say bunghole.
We'd have to do the cider press. There was like a cider press, and there would just be bees all day. I'd be like, the bees are coming for me. Even though I was like, why do I care? They're so drunk. They're just like nectar drunk. The bees don't give a shit. Yeah, Sarah, you need to be that should be your second life job is find
booze and cannons. Yes.
Find a weird esoteric 18th century skill, 19th century skill, and just go with it. You make that your thing.
Rum, sodomy, and the lash. I'm saying it's aspirational.
There you go.
I don't understand what was supposed to be so bad about that.
Anyway, we're going to have to cut all this out because this is just me talking. But so, Peyton Place. We're going to end it with our best question. What kind of drink do you think this is? I say that this is a Planter's Punch because one, I got to see Planter's Punch in print. That's also my favorite drink, my absolute favorite drink, because it's fruity, it's frothy, it's nonsense, and also it's really fucking good. This book was all of those things. This was a really good book, and I think that it gets lost in the kind of pop culture, ephemera of Grace Metalious was trying to show us things and maybe not completely artfully, but at least I feel like this is a very fucking real story and I liked it.
I mean, she's certainly trying to blow the doors off of a child abuse, and hidden behind whatever doors. I think it's really interesting that people are always drunk in this book, but it doesn't say what they're drinking except for the barrels of cider. It's just I got another bottle. Do you have a bottle? Do you have a bottle?
It's like a movie. In movies, go to the bars, I have a beer, please.
Yes, exactly. Nobody's ever said that in the history of anywhere, right? But except in a movie. So yeah, I feel like I can't quite. But yeah, what I would like this book to be is a really crisp, a dry cider, which is hard to find in America, a really, really dry cider. But what it actually is kind of one of those way too sweet ciders. And it's good, but you're drinking it, but you're like, if this were just a little drier, if it just had a little less of all of that in it.
I didn't mean to interrupt. So when I was in England, the one time that I went for a school thing, we were there for 6 weeks. We were in Richmond, which is in Yorkshire, and it was the Queen's. I think it was her diamond. It was her diamond thing. Okay. And so it was on this green space, the castle's overlooking, and me and my friend who were just we're gonna try every kind of booze we can. So we got a cider, and it was the old it had a something dick name to it. And our professor came up. She's like, what are you drinking? And we're like, something dick. She's like, I love dick. And we were just he. It was so stupid. But it was just this 70-year-old woman with hair down to her ass talking about how she loved spotted dick or something. And we're just oh my God. So yes. All right. So Henry, what did you think of the book, especially in comparison to the movie?
I think it's a lot more important than I thought it would be. It tells a lot more important messages than the movie itself. The movie just feels I guess this is what they liked back then. Whereas the book is way more scandalous than I imagine. Like, this would shock even a contemporary reader, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just
that surprised me.
Yeah, I just assumed that the book was like, oh, it probably is a little bit like less censored than the movie, but it's probably just like quite milquetoast. But then like, whoa, they do weird things in this book. No wonder people were pissed in the 50s.
Yeah, when it started off, and I was like, "Oh, it's just what they masturbate, the kids have sex, whatever." Like I was like, "This is not going to shock me."
Yeah.
By the end of it, I have to say, no. I was not expecting. You win, McGrace.
I'm glad I read it. It's like it's so unique for its time.
I don't know. I thought it was, especially. I think it's this weird. It's fun to think of, like, you know, there's all this generational stuff going on. You know, like, oh, your generation, blah blah blah, your generation, blah blah blah, and like. I feel like the 50s always gets kind of like, the 40s obviously were like war impacted, and the 60s are war impacted, and also like protests impacted. And the 50s is kind of, the 50s are kind of like Gen X, you know, like it's just like, yeah. You know, like they were doing this.
They went down to the soda shop.
They were looking at Mamie eyes.
They had poodle skirts.
Like that there was no any kind of like subversive anything. And I think that this book, you know, really, especially
this is what they were reading. This is what those people were reading. Okay.
Again,
get it, Grandma. Get it.
60,000 copies in 10 days is great. Like that's
when an average novel sells like 2,000 copies, like in their lifetime or something.
Also, when you think about the fact that a lot of people would not have been wanted to be seen with it, that there must have been a lot of like brown paper or like, okay, when you're done with that, let me have. I mean, like in other words, probably did not have the sales that actually reflect the readership.
Well, I think they talk about that too. Like, I mean, they don't really, but they allude to it. Like when Norman and other people talk about like sending away for like illicit material, like nobody's going to their local library and like checking out Peyton Place. Like you have, that's a book you have to like straight up buy, because like if you buy,
we still have the copy. Like it would, but if this book had been checked out a ton, this would have been way rattier. All right. They would have already been weeded. No, people did not.
But people would have looked at like your librarian would have known who checked it. Like could have done the slime trait on it, you know, like, I think, I think it's a really, so I don't know. I think it's more important than it gets credit for being.
Yeah. I think.
All right. So this was a super fun special episode. If you want to know more about Henry's podcast and listen to their episode about Peyton Place, why don't you give us your pitch, Henry?
Oh, God. So we have a podcast called FireStarters Podcast. Good luck finding it. And we're not the finance one. That's also the same name. We're just going through every single reference in Billy Joe's We Didn't Start the Fire in order. And we just do a little lighthearted summary of each reference to say, like, oh, what is Satayana? Spoilers, we don't really even know after we've done the research. But we're still going strong. We're past the halfway mark in the references. I think we have about roughly 120 references, and we're like 60 something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so upset because, like, when you guys get done, because honestly, it's one of my favorite podcasts because it gives really good snippet overviews of things, like, and I mean, it veers from obviously like things like Jackie Robinson, but then it talks about like the Suez Canal, and like it's such a great, if you need just general like knowledge, it's such a great episode for like basically 20th century culture.
Yeah,
so
it really forces us to go out of our comfort zone to look at things that we have no idea what it was about before we research them, you know? Especially because a lot of it's American references, and we're both from the UK, and we're like, we don't know half of these.
So yeah, when you get to the Coca-Cola Wars, right?
Oh, that's be so much fun.
So where can they find you on social media?
So we're on Twitter at FireStarters Pod, and we're on Instagram at FireStarters Pod as well. And if you want to email us, it's at firestarterspodcast@gmail.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and being with us on it. I'm so glad you read the book, because if you hadn't read the book, I guess it would have also been fun to tell you all the things that you didn't know about the book. But I feel like it would have taken even longer to catch you up on this stuff.
I'm glad I went through the book. It's an experience. I'm gonna put it on Goodreads, like to rate it.
I wasn't sure how many stars to put. I really had no clue. I didn't know. So when I don't know, I give it 4.
Yeah, I'm giving it 4 as well.
So I gave it 4, but I just don't know what else to do, right? All right, well, you can catch us at Bodice Tipplers on almost everything, except that on Twitter we are B-Tipplers. Our Patreon is patreon.com/bodicetipplers, or you can just find it at our website, which is www.bodicetipplers.com.